Yes, guys, you are all welcome. Yeah, it's a special show today, ladies and gentlemen. We are off to location 9, where there is a special symposium on the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation. Yes, they've got some fantastic speakers lined up as well, and this is still part of the celebration for the late sage. We're gonna have a good time, and I hope you will enjoy the stream. It is Monday, 11th day of the 4th month of April 2022. The time currently in London is 16:51. The temperature in London is 14 degrees Celsius. It is sunny. Welcome to the stream. Hashtag Obafemi Awolowo Foundation. Dabo waka. Oh yes. Fọba Elédùmarè ṣóhun ló ń dáàbò bò wá kárèrè ọjà. Elédùmarè balókè bàbá. Yes, the show will start very shortly on the celebration, still in the mood, celebrating the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo's birthday since last month. And today the foundation will be talking on different aspect. We are about to start. Just be patient.
I believe we're on. That would be my guess. Well, good evening, Excellencies, distinguished guests, speakers, Panelists, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's lecture commemorating the 30th anniversary of the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation. I trust you've enjoyed the musical interlude while you're waiting for the program to begin. Well, my name is Victor Oladuko, and it's a pleasure, a wonderful pleasure, to moderate today's virtual event. Well, close to 2,000 online participants from all across Nigeria and Africa, and also from around the world are registered for what promises today to be a deep, thought-provoking, insightful, and inspirational lecture series. Our diverse audience comes from all walks of life and from diverse cultures and backgrounds. However, one thing they share in common is an appreciation for the ideas, ideals, vision, selfless leadership, and wisdom of one of Nigeria's greatest ever political icons, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who has often been described as the greatest president Nigeria never had. Well, thank you for joining us and welcome once again. To kick things off, we're going to start with the second stanza of the national anthem, which will also serve as our opening prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
James Coker.
Well, I don't know if you're like me, but I just had goosebumps listening to the second stanza of the national
anthem. You see, they omitted the first verse.
To the creator of the universe,
They omitted "Arise, O compatriot," James Coker. That is a signal.
And build a nation based on the ideals of peace.
I wanted to comment on that, but the moderator quickly came in. We're going to have a cracky time.
Kindly allow me to emphasize a few housekeeping rules before we get started. First, if you are a panelist or a speaker with an active microphone connection, please ensure it is on mute, except when presenting or responding to a question from the audience. Second, there will be opportunities to field questions from the audience during the Q&A session. If you do, kindly identify which speaker or panelist your question is directed to, and also identify yourself, just in case your name isn't listed on the screen. A support team will help curate the questions and pass them on to me to field them to any of the panelists or the speakers. Third, if you would like to post comments on social media platforms, do so, and let's give the Awolowo Foundation, the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, the visibility that it truly does deserve. Well, the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation is indeed a testament to the formidable power and endurance of goodwill. As the Yoruba adage says, "Orúkọ rere ó sàn ju wúrà àti fàdákà lọ." A good name is better than silver and gold. If that were not the case, we would not all be gathered here 30 years after the foundation was created to honor the legacy of a great and honorable Nigerian To present a formal welcome address, kindly join me in welcoming the daughter of Chief Obafemi Awolowo, the erudite and visionary chairperson of the foundation, Ambassador Dr. Olatokunbo Awolowo Dosunmu. Her indefatigable spirit and exceptional sense of patriotism has been the driving force behind this much-needed foundation. She, more than anybody else, has made it possible for this much-needed policy and research think tank to lead the way in Nigeria. So once again, please give a warm virtual welcome to Ambassador Awolowo Dosunmu. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. It gives me great pleasure to welcome everybody who is already online. And I presume there are others on the way to join us this afternoon. It is my very great pleasure, considering the fact that both Muslims and Christians are in the fasting period, and this is about the time that we all break our fast. It is particularly gratifying to see so many people online already. I welcome our special guests. I know that the chairman of MTN Foundation is already online. Julius Adelusi Adelu is already online. I also know that the executive secretary of the African Capacity Building Foundation, Mr. Mamadou Biteye, is also online. I know our keynote speaker is online already, and I know that our panel is entirely present. Max Bokwana from the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, Dr. Annette Akinshete from the Sickle Cell Foundation, Mrs. Ifeyiwa Ugochukwu from the Tony Elumelu Foundation, and also Dr. Hope Osieta from the Leventis Foundation. I thank you all most sincerely for taking the time. I know that there are some other foundations represented in the audience, and as we go along, I'm sure the moderator will recognize you all. You are most welcome. As you all know, the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation was launched exactly 30 years ago today. It was launched on the 11th of April, 1992. It is therefore most fitting that we use the opportunity of this landmark to beam our searchlight on the impact of foundations and similar institutions in developing countries. Let me first of all salute all those individuals, families, corporate bodies, and communities that have taken it upon themselves to set up foundations and similar third sector organizations, particularly in developing countries where provision often falls critically short of the needs of society. They deploy their own or other privately sourced funds to achieve great feats quietly and without fanfare. I congratulate you all. I must also commend all the foreign-based foundations whose work in developing countries continue to be highly commendable. Foundations come into being through deliberate choice, and by their very nature as independent institutions, they're able not only to choose their areas of intervention, but also their strategies for the actualization of their mission. The Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, for example, is a legacy foundation, and public policy advocacy was our preferred strategy for obvious reasons. A cursory look at the human development indices of developing countries shows very clearly the vital role that grant-making foundations could make in those countries. Furthermore, Because their unique governance structure allows for a significant shorter time lag between decision and implementation, foundations are able to respond faster to societal needs. However, we at the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation have, over the years, learned many valuable lessons about the challenges that foundations also face, again by their very nature. I will mention only a few. We have learned, first of all, that sustainability is probably the greatest of all the challenges that face third sector organizations. It takes uncommon determination and commitment for a foundation to remain afloat and relevant without compromising its core principles. Secondly, we have learned that foundations need to decide ab initio what their unique strengths and therefore their areas of intervention would be, and try as much as possible not to deviate from them. Their preferred mode of intervention should also be clearly spelled out. These could make a huge difference to their long-term relevance and success. The third lesson we have learned has to do with the imperative of performing periodic self-checks to ensure that the institution stays on course and remains faithful to its mission. For grant-making and operating foundations, self-appraisal is probably a more straightforward exercise for obvious reasons. For public policy advocacy institutions, on the other hand, parameters for self-appraisal tend to be less precise. Nevertheless, we have learned that we must continuously find ways to check on our direction and continued relevance. Above all, we have learned the importance of finding occasional opportunities to network with other foundations, to share experiences, learn from and encourage one another, explore synergies for greater effectiveness. For example, my stint as the representative of the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation on the International Committee of the Council on Foundations helped to widen our scope in terms of ideas and strategies. The sheer magnitude of foundations' self-appointed tasks, particularly in developing countries, can be overwhelming. But let me end these brief remarks with the parable of the starfish. I am sure most people in the audience already know this story, but it is worth repeating for the purposes of this meeting. One day, a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking something up and gently throwing it into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "What are you doing?" The youth replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. The surf is up and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they'll die." "Son," the man said, "don't you realize there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't make a difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it back into the surf. Then, smiling at the man, he said, "I made a difference to that one." The moral of the story is simple. Let us always be encouraged and keep making a difference to our societies, even if it is to one starfish at a time. Mr. Chairman, special guests, our distinguished keynote speaker and distinguished panelists, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all once again to what promises to be a most enlightening and crucial forum. and I thank you all for your attention. I welcome you also, Her Excellency Mrs. Zanel and Becky. Thank you all once again.
Many thanks for that. Many thanks for that warm. I think we're going to probably have to turn off some microphones there. Many thanks for that very warm welcome address, Ambassador Awolowo Dosunmu. Very much appreciated. I, in particular, love the story of the starfish. The bottom line is that every single one of us has something that we can give to help make a difference. 3 key messages from the welcome. Foundations are able to respond faster to needs, and that is true. Sustainability is core. It really does take a lot of determination and grit to continue legacies, particularly with regards to foundations, without compromising the founding principles. And third, self-appraisal is key, not just for foundations, to my mind, but also for institutions and nations. Why is that important? Change is dynamic. What works today may not be relevant tomorrow. So leaders have to constantly scan the horizon and the environment and adjust to compelling needs accordingly. That is the truism of the world that we live in today, a dynamic environment constantly in a state of flux that requires very, very nimble adjustments to the needs of society. Once again, Ambassador Awolowo Dosunmu, thank you very much for your warm welcome. Well, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me just take you back through memory lane for a few moments. You know, I must admit that in all of my adult life, I have only ever attended one political rally and for one particular person. The year was 1979. Shortly after the flag bearer of the UPN party, Chief Awolowo, was holding his first political rally following the lifting of the ban on partisan politics by the then military regime. Now, this is a non-partisan event, but just bear with me and hang with me for a few moments. The venue of his first rally was the Tafawa Balewa Square,
yeah, I remember.
in Lagos.
Yeah.
My very good friend, Akinwumi Adesina, who is now the president of the African Development Bank, and I, we set out early in the morning from the then University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University, hoping to be one of the first to arrive at the venue. But much to our shock on arrival early that morning, the gates were already locked and the square completely packed, including the stands and the grounds. At that time, it was the largest single crowd I had ever seen in one place in my life. Akin Adesina and I were not to be deterred, however. We had come too far to be denied access. So we came up with a plan to climb up the tall steel gates below the horses. If you're familiar with Tafawa Balewa Square, you know
correct.
how high those things are.
Yeah, correct.
And after much suffering and smiling, we finally made our way up the gate to the front of the platform, just right next to Chief Awolowo and his ever beautiful wife, Chief Hannah Didiolu Awolowo. Not too long ago, I drove past those same gates that have stood for more than 60 years in Lagos. And I wondered aloud, how in the world were we able to scale those heights? But then I reminded myself that it really isn't difficult to follow and to support truly selfless and visionary leaders who have a passion to make a difference in the lives of people. Well, that legacy of selfless and committed service continues through the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation today. It is also why 3 exemplary leaders with a history of lifelong service to humanity through their foundations have been selected to talk about the work that they do and the impact that their foundations have in Nigeria and across Africa. Our first special guest this evening is a pioneer par excellence. His name has been synonymous with Nigeria's pharmaceutical industry for over 50 years. He attended the very best university in Nigeria, my alma mater, the then University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University, where he graduated as the best student in the School of Law. Throughout his distinguished career, his name has been associated with a number of things, of which integrity and exemplary leadership are at the top. He's been a lifelong, he has had a lifetime of service to humanity, and this didn't just occur during his professional life. At a very, very young age, during the Nigerian Civil War, he became an advocate for peace. Today, and many years later, he is still very much driven by the virtues of empathy, philanthropy, and kindness. Please, ladies and gentlemen, join me once again in giving a warm virtual welcome to Prince Julius Adelusi Adelui, the founder of Julie PLC, formerly known as Julie Pharmacy, and the chairman of the MTN Foundation. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. And I hope you can hear me.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you very much. It's such a pleasure for me to be in the midst of like-minded people. Let me begin with profound respect, recognizing the invitees, the chief invitees to this occasion, the chairman, the special guests, the guest speaker, the panelists, and all of us, about 217 the last time I counted, in this chat room. Permit me also to, in a very special way, congratulate Her Excellency Ambassador Tukubo Awolowo Dosunmu. She has been selected by nature to perform the role that she is performing at this point in time. The Obafemi Awolowo family is very illustrious. Some of them have departed, and may their souls rest in peace. I have been very fortunate to be a little bit close to members of the family, the matriarch, the patriarch, and the siblings of my dear sister Tukumbo. My dear sister Tukumbo, let me also tell you how proud of you I am for the work you have done on the OAF, the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation. I must say I was quite lucky to have been one of the invitees to the formal presentation of the foundation on the 11th of April, 1992, an occasion that was graciously presided over by past president of this nation, IBB, at the Liberty Stadium. And this is 5 years after revered father, Obafemi Awolowo, died in 1987. Congratulations to you. I am very impressed, and I can tell you, Tukubo, that I'm not the only one so impressed by the way you have made sure that the foundation has remained relevant to nation building. The way that the foundation has reflected the concerns, the thoughts, and the works of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. The way you have promoted his democratic and development-driven ideals, and the way you have steadfastly arranged over these 30 years interaction and interface between town and gown, and between policy and scholarship. Congratulations. I am also quite pleased and not surprised that you have chosen themes year in, year out that are very relevant to the development of the nation. And this year, choosing the role of foundations in developing countries has been very, very point on. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are a developing nation, so it's not necessary to define what a developing nation is. Low per capita, real income, very high population growth rate, very high rate of unemployment, widespread poverty and insecurity. And of course, we find that all developing nations, without any exception, tend to be dependent on grants and aids from so-called developed nations. And therefore, it's very important to know or to explore what the role of the foundation would be in a developing nation like ours. I have been chairman of the MTN Foundation for several years. I'm not a shareholder in MTN. I do not need to be. The MTN company is one of the biggest in this country. And since July 2004, when the foundation was formed, it was set up to drive the CSR component of the company. And this was done in the last 16, 18 years or so in very many fields. We decided initially to intervene beneficially in the areas of health, education, and economic empowerment. But this has had to be expanded from time to time to be able to have impact on the expanding needs of the communities. We've touched on education, we've touched on economic empowerment, we've been involved in the promotion of music and the arts. We have developed orphanages throughout Nigeria. We are very specialized in the promotion of youth, and we've been involved in women matters, the supply of water. We've been involved in medical research, and we've been involved in a program called What Can We Do Together, which means we go into various communities in this country and ask them, what do you really want done? It's been very revealing when you do that kind of thing to communities. And we have been very fulfilled by what we've done. Between 2004 and now, MTN Foundation has expended approximately 24 billion naira in our various projects. We've done more than 900 projects. We are involved in various sites. We're involved in about 2,516 communities across all the states, 36 states, and the FCT. We've, for example, given more than 4,000 scholarships to young students. We've done ICT programs. Name it, we've done it. We say to ourselves, if you're a foundation and you are well funded, as we are by the MTN company, and you are full of imagination, there is no end to your being very useful to the community. I think the MTN was very wise in setting up the foundation as a different independent entity. They then give it funds, and they rely on the members of the board and the management to create projects that will be of benefit to the community. I can tell you that some of the board members are very, very experienced. Some of them are past chairmen of banks, some are leaders in the ministries. It's fantastic. And when these people get together and then consult with the management, the result is only very satisfactory. I'm very eager to tell you that we, in the process of doing all this, have also had some experience. Ambassador Tukumo was talking about sustainability. In the early years, we found that this was a big challenge. You start something somewhere, you excite the people, there's dancing and happiness when it starts. 2 years down the line, it isn't there anymore. And what we did, of course, because of the eggheads around us, was to set up a permanent committee, the Monitoring and Evaluation Committee, M&E, that would move from project to project throughout the nation, and then report back so that before things get from bad to worse, we're there with our troop to make things happen. But what I believe is that this kind of get-together, apart from listening to various experiences, would be to think maybe futuristically. The last time we checked, we found that there were about 4,600 NGOs, including the various foundations in Nigeria, and there are various levels of performance. Some are rather big, but when you say big, it's only in local terms. You can never compare yourself, for example, with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which was founded in 2000, with an endowment funding of 50.76 billion that donates 1 billion annually. But you don't have to be the biggest to be able to perform. Like the ambassador said about the starfish, if all you can do is make a difference to a little group of people, do it enthusiastically. Now, my advice to people, though, is that when you want to start a foundation, you must have structure. A portmanteau foundation hardly ever is sustainable in itself, not to talk about its projects being sustainable. I also believe that there must be good governance principles put in place. And then the issue of accountability, financial management. Unless these basic things are there, we tend to have foundations that are there today and they are gone tomorrow. I mean, it's possible to have foundations that are old and still performing. Take, for example, the John Clark Trust that was formed. It's the oldest in the US, formed in 1696. It's still going on because it has defeated the sustainability issues. And as the ambassador said, you can have a foundation that is focused on some channel. If you look at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, a foundation, it focuses on people, not on projects. And by now it has about 29 Nobel Prize winners. So I believe that this togetherness today must have some takeaways with us, in the sense that, one, we should perhaps think towards what Britain did many years ago, form an association of charitable foundations, ACT, so that we can support foundations and strengthen them where necessary, so that when we have stronger foundations, our ability to deliver more beneficially is assured. We must also set standards. Not everybody. In Nigeria, you start something, a whole lot of people then want to do the same thing, and standards are lost. So such an association can also help set standards and, in fact, improve performance. If you look at the Fortune 500 judgment assessment on what we call the best givers, the leading ones are like Walmart, like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and so on. I believe that if we take this away, and if we believe that we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give, if we believe that the one that serves the community best profits the most, if we believe that foundations have a vital source for social good, there we are. This discussion tonight will not have been lost. As far as we are concerned, we are ready in the foundation, given our experience that is nationwide, that also is international, because MTN has a network of foundations. If we are called upon any time, we are ready. Again, I congratulate Her Excellency, my sister Tukumbo, and Oladokun Victor, I'm very proud of you. You have a fantastic track record in doing good. And I greet all those who are here waiting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prince Julius Adeluyi, for your brief, very concise, thought-provoking speech. And thank you very much, sir, for your very kind words for me. Greatly appreciated. I do apologize. I did not realize that while you were speaking with my camera on, that the tech team couldn't get to you. I hope that problem was resolved, but kindly accept my very sincere apologies in that regard. Sir, throughout your career, you really have been an inspiration to millions in Nigeria and outside of the country. You set the benchmark for the pharmaceutical industry many, many years ago. And over 40 years ago, to my recollection, your company, Julie Pharmacy, was already a household name. So congratulations, and thank you very much, sir, for being the inspiration that you've been to millions of Nigerians and to me in particular. Just a few very quick recaps of what you shared with us. Thank you again for reminding us about the tremendous work that MTN is doing in the area of corporate social responsibility. 24 billion naira in recent years, 900 projects in over 2,000 communities. That is extremely significant and something that I'm sure other institutions can again take inspiration from. In the areas of education, music, arts, the youth, ICT, scholarships, orphanages, and in women issues. And I just want to point out here that MTN's emphasis is in the right place because the youth under the age of 20 account for the majority of our populations, not just in Nigeria, but all across the continent. And what we do with the youth today will determine the Nigeria and the Africa of the future. So thank you very much again for reminding us about that and for personally and institutionally making a difference. How do we start? Well, we start with what we have and where we are. Again, you reminded us to think futuristically in terms of how we structure ourselves, governance issues, accountability, and again, a takeaway to form an association of reputable foundations with standards of excellence. This, sir, is true of foundations. It is true of institutions. It is true of the corporate sector, the private sector, and it certainly is true of nations. Once again, thank you very much, Prince Julius Adeluyi, for your excellent short speech as special guest and for being with us here today. Our second special guest is a polyglot. He speaks English, French, Russian, Portuguese, and his native Wolof, which, as you all know, is from Gambia, and it is from the name Wolof that we get the word jollof. So the debate still continues today about whether Nigeria's jollof rice is better than the Ghanaian jollof rice. I think our next guest is actually going to disagree because it has its origins in the Wolof region of the Gambia. Over the years, his linguistic skills, his visionary leadership, business acumen, and advocacy on behalf of Africa's poor and vulnerable has placed him at the helm of several international institutions and organizations, including the Rockefeller Foundation and Oxfam. He currently serves as the Vice President at Visa, where he is responsible for several portfolios, including inclusive growth strategy, global social impact programming, measurement, and thought leadership. We are really honored to have with us today as one of our special guests to share about the work that Visa is doing to make a difference, a tangible and a strategic difference in Africa. So once again, please, in this virtual space, let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Mamadou Biteye. The virtual space is yours, sir.
Hello. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay. My camera is disabled, right? I'm not able to turn it on. But I will proceed until when I have the opportunity, the authorization to turn on my camera, I will. Okay, now it works. Okay. First of all, I want to say good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone. And I want to express my gratitude and honor to be invited to share some remarks at this important milestone, which is the 30th anniversary of the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation. I wanted to make a few remarks. I think that I have been introduced as the Executive Secretary of the African Capacity Building Foundation. I am the Executive Secretary elect. I have not yet assumed duty, which will happen in May. But I would like to draw on my different experiences with the Rockefeller Foundation, with other organizations as the U.S. African Development Foundation, and today Visa, to share a few remarks on the big question about the role of foundations in developing countries. This is a very, very big question. And foundations today are growing in numbers. They are growing in impact. They are also growing in the ways they work. They do their best to address some of the problems or issues or the needs of society. These are many. We can mention some like poverty, education, healthcare. The biggest challenge that humanity faces in Africa as one of them, which is the youth bulge and the issue of youth employment. We can talk about human capital building or institution building. So the needs are many and enormous. And I should say that different types of foundations, whether these are private foundations or corporate foundations or family foundations, are all working in these different areas. But I should say that each of these problems taken alone is bigger than any one organization. Even states and governments struggle to address these challenges. This is why I believe that foundations have a unique position to contributing to unveiling or finding strategic solutions to these challenges. Why foundations are in this position? Because foundations are not corporate entities that are looking at quarterly earnings, which might direct their action otherwise. Foundations are not either government entities or that look at the next electoral outcomes or next elections. So they have the independence and the possibility to actually direct their resources to finding those solutions I mentioned to these challenges. And this is why that unique position is that foundations, to me, despite everything that is being done in the different areas I mentioned, to me, one of the biggest contribution they can bring is actually providing that risk capital that oils what I could call the wheel of progress. What does that mean? This means that foundations have the possibility to try and fail. They have the possibility to direct resources to new ideas, untested ideas, unlikely ideas, or some of the vague concepts that actually can be translated to proof of concepts, which actually others can take and invest in. To do that, foundations actually need also one of the examples, let me just give an example to bring this home. When I worked at the Rockefeller Foundation, I led one initiative that was called Digital Jobs Africa, which was a $100 million, 7-year initiative looking at training and connecting young people into jobs enabled by ICT. Not ICT jobs, but jobs that are created by the deployment of ICT into different processes. This required training. This required working with employers, corporates. This required also working with governments to create the enabling environment. One of the things the initiative did was actually creating what was called impact sourcing, which is a practice that would encourage employers and corporates to deliberately employ young people from disadvantaged backgrounds who do not have tertiary diplomas or tertiary education, and who otherwise wouldn't have access to employment. The foundation directed resources to do research to find out in what conditions and what type of training these young people should receive to increase their employability. The second thing was also investing in developing a business case that shows that these young people, although from disadvantaged background, who nobody looks at potential employers, could be dedicated, productive employees, and also show how their hiring them could directly improve the efficiency of corporates, but also impact positively on their bottom line. And taking all of this information, then the foundation launched what was called a global impact sourcing coalition, which was launched with 7 corporates, African and international. But over the years, today it boasts over 40 global corporates that are embracing impact sourcing, integrating it into their strategies for talent acquisition, but also promoting it. This has opened the avenues for employment for many, many, many young people, not just in Africa. Although this was designed for Africa, but this approach was also adopted in many other countries, such as the Philippines, Colombia, and you name it. So this is where actually philanthropic capital can really help develop those proof of concept that others actually are willing to invest in to scale. The other thing I wanted to say is that relative to the size of the private sector and also the public sector of the economy, foundations are small. To make change, must look for ways to leverage their investment by either catalyzing contributions from others, what we could call financial leverage. One of the examples that we can talk about is the Partnership for Inclusive Agricultural Transformation in Africa, which was developed in 2017 and launched between the Rockefeller Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, USAID, and the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. There was a $280 million partnership with foundations and AGRA having a shared vision about that transformation, but also very important, developing a shared measurement framework. And this has allowed to channel important resources because this partnership was further joined by GIZ, by DFID, and even the Dutch, the Netherlands Corporation, to channel significant resources to engage in systemic change in agriculture in 11 countries, and with the goal of transforming the farmer into an entrepreneur. So that financial leverage is extremely important in reaching scale. The other approach is also how do you ignite larger processes of social change? That's what we can call social leverage. And the example I have just given about impact sourcing is one of them. But talking about the new role I will be embracing, doing that and finding points of leverage demands a sophisticated knowledge of the social systems that surround a given problem. And this requires capacities. And this is why, actually, the African Capacity Building Foundation, with its mission of building the capacities of the public sector, whether these are state actors or non-state actors, including civil society and foundation, to bring about development, will be looking into a couple of issues. To me, these are 6 that are critical. One is about how do you help foundations to be disciplined or to develop discipline in their study of problems and formulation of strategic solutions. Second, to be collaborative in their work with governments and local communities. Third, to have a scientific approach to the development of new knowledge. And how do they focus on the development of human capital to create long-term capacity? Because long-term capacity is ultimately what is going to give everyone the information, the means to transform their own destiny. How foundations can be deliberate in their openness to new ideas, embracing them and supporting them? And how can they be relentless in their efforts to disseminate new information to specialized and general audiences? So those are some. And perhaps one of the other things that is very important is today, we know through research, one of the research published by the World Economic Forum says that 70% of wealth that will be created in the next 10 years are going to be through digital platforms. We have also seen over the years of COVID, over the past 2 years, over 3 years worth of digital transformation actually happened in just 1 year. This is absolutely very important in terms of how do we make sure that foundations and those they support actually have the capacity to leverage digital. because also we've seen during the pandemic that those who were digitally enabled actually resisted and even in some cases thrived. And alternatively, those who were not digitally enabled or did not have employees that had digital capabilities actually were the ones who were heavily affected. So the embracement of digital, whether it is in fundraising, whether it is in deploying services, are extremely important, and I think that it is something in the future as well that will enable and position foundations to play even a bigger role. I would just say a few words around Visa. Visa Foundation actually aims at two things. One is enabling access and control over resources for women, but particularly women who own or drive or lead actually micro and small businesses. And the reason why that focus, because women are traditionally excluded from formal finance. But second, because also the importance of micro and small businesses. They constitute 70% of or more of businesses in developing, in emerging markets. They also provide more than half of all new jobs in those markets as well. So supporting them is actually driving inclusive economic growth. This is done through, for instance, grant making, but it is also done through impact investing. The Visa Foundation has announced a year ago over $200 million mobilized in what we call equal opportunity or equal access. And this is being deployed through both means that I have just said to support actually the growth and thriving of women and businesses. And finally, through the corporate, we are also supporting these micro and small businesses through the deployment of our solutions and products, and through the support to fintechs who actually today are reaching out more where traditional banks cannot reach out to drive financial inclusion. And this is done through digitization, this is done through capacity building, but also business and financial skills education. These are some of the remarks that I wanted to share today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. Mamadou Bitie, thank you very much again for inspiring us and for giving us a roadmap for what needs to be done in terms of the relevance of foundations in the development of nations. And thank you also for, again, providing us with a glimpse of what it is that Visa, the company for which you serve as Vice President, is helping to make a difference. Just a few quick recaps here. Foundations are the wheel of progress. Certainly, foundations relative to the public sector or even the corporate sector, the private sector, are small and therefore have to strategically and financially partner and collaborate. That really is the name of the game, not just for foundations, but for institutions, for young Africans, for young Nigerians. Collaboration is key. The rest of the world does it extremely well, bringing the best of technology, money, and talent together. And I think that's something that we also must accelerate, even in our work. Collaboration is certainly key. You've talked about the need for a scientific approach to new knowledge and its application through human capacity development. and again, digital platforms, using those to accelerate development, which of course is changing the nature of work itself. And for foundations, institutions, and the private sector, obviously, this is going to be critical for deploying services, whether it be in agriculture, to women, or to the youth. And again, you've highlighted how it is that Visa is putting together $200 million in the form of grants, impact investing, and support of micro businesses. Thank you very much, Mr. Bitiye, and thank you for also joining us and for, again, providing us with the excellent roadmap that you have. Our third special guest needs no introduction. He's a lawyer. He's a pioneer industrialist in the health sector. He's a visionary educationist and a generous philanthropist. Although he will turn 90 in a few months from now, he is blessed with extraordinary energy. He continues to build legacies for the future through his foundation, the Kola Daisy Foundation, a non-governmental, non-profit, non-partisan, non-sectarian organization whose focus is helping Nigerians through healthcare, poverty alleviation, and education. Truly is making a huge difference. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the one, the only High Chief Bashor Kola Daisy, our special guest. You are most welcome, sir, and the virtual space is yours. Welcome, sir. Looks like we have a technical hitch here, so kindly bear with us. We will try and rectify that as quickly as possible.
Awolowo Foundation is 30. Inaugurated on April 11, 1992, the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation has clocked 30 years. In those 3 decades, the foundation has delivered on its mandate of using the ideals of the sage Chief Obafemi Awolowo to advance the cause of humanity and the development of the Nigerian nation. The foundation, as the institutional custodian of Chief Awolowo's intellectual legacy, has over the years guarded most jealously its independence, non-partisanship, and commitment to the promotion of a socially edifying interaction between policy and scholarship. The foundation has sought to actualize its mission mandate through various outreach programs, including but not limited to lectures, dialogues, executive leadership seminars, symposia, and more recently, our conversations, all of which are designed to provide suitable fora for rational discussion of the great issues of the day in order to continue to build upon the ideals that inspired the public and patriotic activities of Chief Awolowo. Therefore, in pursuance of its ennobling axiom, generating ideas for national development, the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation has consistently ensured that these annual lecture series hold without fail, even in the face of great challenges like the COVID-19 pandemic. The maiden dialogue held in 1992 with the theme Nigeria, the Way Forward featured Professor Claude Ake, 1992 Nigerian National Merit Award winner, as the keynote speaker, Dr. Pius Okigbo, International economist and elder statesman, was the chairman of the event. The foundation has also organized other groundbreaking annual lectures, dialogues, and conversations on critical issues like the Dialogue on Education in 1993, themed Nigeria and Education, the Challenges Ahead. The keynote address was delivered by late Professor J.F. Adeajayi with Dr. S.J. Kuke, foremost education administrator, as chairman. Other dialogues include the one on Nigeria in Search of Leadership, held in 1994, and which had Justice Chukwudifo Oputa as chairman with the keynote address delivered by eminent jurist Justice Akinola Aguda. There was also a dialogue on Nigeria, democracy, and the rule of law, which was the focus of a seminal address delivered by Professor Itse Sage in 1995 under the chairmanship of legal icon Chief Rotimi Williams, SAN. The most recent of these was the 2021 Obafemi Awolowo lecture themed Whither Nigeria, delivered by Odia Ofeimon, with Professor Wale Soyinka as chairman, Chief Emeka Anyaoku as special guest, and the Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Saad Abubakar, as the royal father of the day. The Obafemi Awolowo Prize for Leadership was instituted by the foundation in the name of Chief Obafemi Awolowo to encourage, recognize, reward, and celebrate excellence in Nigerian leadership. In selecting candidates, emphasis is laid on characteristics of leadership and good governance that are in tandem with Chief Awolowo's values. The candidate must be an honest person, possessing strong moral principles, and must also be a person in whom people believe and repose trust. The prize is awarded every 2 years based on demonstrable evidence of substantial achievements across the board of the criteria laid out by the selection committee made up of eminent Nigerians of utmost integrity, led by Chief Emeka Anyaoku, a former Secretary General of the Commonwealth. Because of the very stringent conditions attached to winning the award, only 3 accomplished Africans have so far won the prize. They are Nobel laureate Professor Wale Soyinka in 2012, former South African President Thabo Mbeki in 2014, and Chief Afe Babalola SAN in 2018. In January 2009, the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation launched a year-long program in celebrations of the centenary of the birth of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Public presentation of the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation's commemorative publication, Awo on the Trail of a Titan, was held at Muson Center, Lagos on January 29, 2009. Also, on March 3, 2009, a centennial lecture was delivered by Professor Wale Soyinka at the NIIA Lagos, while a former Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Kofi Annan, delivered the second lecture at the same venue on March 20, 2009. A special centennial dialogue was held between July 21 and 22, 2009, in collaboration with the Obafemi Awolowo University, with the theme The Awolowo Legacy and the Youth. It was held at Oduduwa Hall, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. On October 28, 2009, the foundation held a program on 50 years of television in Africa, The Journey So Far, at the Premier Hotel, Ibadan. On October 6, 2009, the foundation launched a book, Obafemi Awolowo and the Making of Remo, the local politics of a Nigerian nationalist, in collaboration with the International African Institute and Edinburgh University Press at the School of Oriental and African Studies, London, from January 20 to 21, 2010. The grand finale conference themed Free Education in Nigeria, 55 Years On, was held alongside the public presentation of Owl the Builder, a children's version of Owl's biography written by Chief Wumi Adigbomire at Neka House, Alausa, Lagos. The Awolowo Foundation has, in the last 3 decades, continued to enjoy tremendous support from all strata of the Nigerian society. For instance, the centennial celebrations coincided with the protracted ASU strike of the year 2009. Yet, ASU wrote to the foundation not only endorsing the program, but it also encouraged its striking members and students to participate actively in the 2-day event held in OAU, Ile-Ife, in July 2009. The events were so successful that the main bowl of the university's Oduduwa Hall was filled to capacity. A significant aspect of the foundation's mandate is poverty alleviation. Very early in its existence, it embarked on a microcredit project, mobilizing critical stakeholders to confront issues of poverty and proffer solutions. In furtherance of this objective, the foundation prepared a valuable document which it distributed at a microcredit summit held in Washington, D.C., the United States, in February 1997. It has since then continued to build on that pioneer effort. There is also the Foundation's Center for Leadership Studies, which hosted its inaugural event titled Leadership for Corporate Philanthropy. For the youths, the Foundation has hosted a number of structured outreach programs, including dialogues, lectures, symposia, and hour conversations. Of particular interest is the annual Obafemi Awolowo Memorial and HID Awolowo Memorial Under-17 Boys and Girls Youth Soccer competitions, designed specifically for the right development of youths at the grassroots. The Owl Foundation's varied public outings and research efforts have resulted in books, reports, and monographs, which are widely circulated and can be sourced from the Foundation's website, www.obafemiawolowofoundation.org. For the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, it has been 30 years of impactful engagement with humanity. It looks ahead with confidence to deepen its traditional activities and also break new ground to the glory of God and the development of humanity. Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, generating ideas for national development.
Well, a documentary taking us down memory lane on the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, whose work is inspired by a philosopher king, a political giant, and a visionary leader who was light years ahead of his time, Chief Obafemi Awolowo. In a very short span of time, Chief Awolowo showed us what can be achieved when men and women of goodwill, conscience, integrity, and excellence selflessly commit their hearts and their minds to the service of humanity. More importantly, to make a difference in their generation. Kindly permit me at this point to acknowledge Dr. Mininim Oseji. Kindly forgive me if I didn't get the first name right. Permanent Secretary, Delta State Ministry of Environment, who joins us online. I'm waiting for updates on a few others who joined us later on. Let me also apologize for the short snafu, we had a few moments ago. We had queued our third speaker, Chief Koladayi C. But I gather there was a technical glitch on his end, and for that reason, we had to preempt his speech and come to the documentary. So I do apologize for that, but again, we will continue to stay on track, and if Chief Kola Diocese is able to join us later on, we certainly will acknowledge him. Well, earlier we heard from two special guests who have incredible stories of personal and corporate success, Prince Julius Adelusi Adelui and Mamadou Biteye of Visa. A distinguishing feature for each one of them is that they have a passion and a strong desire, as well as a sense of calling, to make a positive difference in the lives of others through poverty alleviation, healthcare, education, and human capacity building. And what a wonderful job they continue to do personally and institutionally. And for that, we are truly grateful and the better off as Nigerians and Africans. We now come to the centerpiece of the 30th anniversary of the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation lecture. The keynote address today, which you have all been waiting for, will be delivered by an exceptional Nigerian scholar, scientist, medical practitioner, globally recognized academic, and a former university vice chancellor. Professor Friday Okonofua is a professor of obstetrics and gynecology and director of grants and research at the University of Benin, Nigeria. He is a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Science and the African Academy of Science. He has served as the executive director of the International Federation of Gynecology and Obstetrics, and as an honorary advisor on health to President Olusegun Obasanjo. Professor Okonofua is a global champion in women's health, a discipline where he has published more than 270 journal articles and obtained 46 international research grants. He is the founder of the Women's Health and Action Research Center, one of Nigeria's leading NGOs, and the founding editor of the African Journal of Reproductive Health. He has a long list of first and numerous accomplishments. He is also a member of the editorial board of the British Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and a reviewer of several international journals. He is the current editor-in-chief of the Proceedings of the Nigerian Academy of Science, published by the Nigerian Academy of Science. He has served as program officer at the Ford Foundation and as a consultant to the World Bank and several other organizations. Particularly, he is the team leader of the World Bank Center of Excellence in Reproductive Health Innovation and the coordinator of the World Bank's projects at the University of Benin in Nigeria. In short, he is a person of great experience and excellence. He recently completed his term as the pioneer vice chancellor of the first University of Medical Sciences in Ondo State, my state, and now he is the director of grants and research at the University of Benin in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, we are truly honored to have with us today, again, the one, the only, Professor Friday Okonofua. Sir, the virtual podium is yours.
Thank you very much, Victor Daduku. I will first of all like to share my screen because I have some slides to show. I first of all would like to very warmly appreciate the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation for giving me this unique opportunity to deliver this keynote address. First, also to congratulate the foundation on this on this anniversary. I want to say that this opportunity is very dear to me in several ways, because for years I have identified Chief Obafemi Awolowo as a role model, an icon, somebody I had the opportunity to know when I was still at the Obafemi Awolowo University those days. and for whom I cried when I heard he passed on 1987. And I told my colleagues who were there reading the newspaper where we read that he had passed on, that Nigeria has indeed passed on at that time. And perhaps I would stand to be corrected. I also want to particularly appreciate Her Excellency Mrs. Tokunbo Usume Awolowo, someone who has been my friend since 1993, somebody I have worked with, and she was the first chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Women's Health and Action Research Center, which I established in 1993, and she worked with me for 6 years until 1999, when Dr. Abel Gribadia took over from her, the former chairman of INEC at that time. So I'm really, I think this presentation has a very novel opportunity, because without Chief Obafemi Awolowo, perhaps I would not be where I am today, because I was from a very poor background. And it was his introduction of the free primary and secondary education at that time that enabled my parents to sponsor me to primary, secondary schools. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm indeed very grateful for this invitation. So I'm going to talk first, present the way lecturers normally talk. And this is that I'm going to describe what foundations are, just because I'm not too sure of the audience. It might be a mixed audience. Thereafter, I will talk about the types and niches of foundations, and then specifically talk about the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, one of the indigenous foundations that we have in this country. And then I will talk about the foundations in the life course of developing countries and what they do for developing countries, and the role they have played in ensuring development of our dear country, particularly. Thereafter, I will talk about the strategic advantages of foundations in philanthropy. And then I have a list some limitations, and thereafter I make recommendations and then conclude. So, other foundations, they are also called charitable organizations or charitable foundations. And these are non-profit organizations that provide funding and support to other charitable organizations through grants. And also sometimes, as many foundations currently do, they also operate directly in providing charitable activities to citizens of developing countries. Now, I would like to make a small distinction between foundations, bilaterals, and multilaterals. Foundations provide funding support to non-profit organizations. By contrast, bilateral agencies are funding agreements between two countries, bilateral agencies, such as DFID between Britain and Nigeria, for example, DANIDA and CIDA between Sweden and other countries, just one-to-one relationship. But by contrast, multilateral agencies are those global agencies set up to fund more than two countries, multiple countries. Example being the WHO, United Nations Fund for Population Activities, UNICEF, and the World Bank. There are basically two types of foundations. These are public charitable organizations, e.g. community foundations. And then the second type are private foundations, which are typically endowed by either an individual or by a family. And today we are going to dwell specifically on private foundations, which are endowed by individual or families. Community foundations are foundations that are dedicated solely to improve the lives of people in a defined geographical area. And currently there are about 1,700 community foundations, of which about 700 are in the United States alone. Today, the largest community foundation in the world is the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and they are continually being established whenever the need arises, and therefore, the most recent community foundation established was the Ukraine Development Foundation, which was set up to support the victims of the Ukraine racial misadventure. I call it misadventure. It turned out to be. And usually the asset size of community foundations vary between $100,000 to about $1.7 billion. For private foundations, which is the focus of my presentation today, are established to pursue specific charitable missions within a wider geographical coverage. It is specifically an organization created by a single primary donation, with programs governed by appointed trustees who oversee the work of those foundations. I'm going to talk a little bit more about them, explain what they do, and explain why they are very relevant to the development of developing countries, particularly Nigeria. I'm going to focus on Nigeria because Nigeria is the biggest country in Africa, and we often say that whatever happens to Nigeria happens to other countries as well. So I'm going to dwell specifically Nigeria because foundations are very many. If I was to talk about foundations in all parts of the world, then not live here today. So ladies and gentlemen, pardon me. Today, there are about 250,000 foundations worldwide. The most endowed, I'm going to list them, about 10 of them or 9 of them, in the rank in which they own endowments in terms of volume of funds that they have. Novo Novice Foundation in Denmark is currently the most endowed foundation in the world, followed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Then third is Distinctive Foundation, and then the 8th is the Open Society Foundation. These are big foundations that are based in different headquarters in different parts of the world. And I will mention Ford Foundation because Ford Foundation used to rank about 3 to 4, but most recently it's ranking about 10th in terms of the volume of funds that they have in terms of investment. So, if you look at where the foundations are seated, there's a map of what I'll call the most generous countries where you have the most foundations. Either the United States of America, Canada. If you look at the far left, you will see countries like Australia and New Zealand. Those are the most generous countries where most foundations are currently located. By contrast, those countries in white tend to be the least generous. And interestingly, these are countries like, I think that area is China. I think increasingly China is beginning to play some role, especially in Africa. But in the past, they were regarded as not too generous in some country. And if you look at the map very well, you see that Nigeria is the darker side, meaning that Nigeria is also a generous country, and some other countries in Africa. As a matter of fact, you can see that Nigeria and possibly Kenya are listed as the most generous countries in Africa, coming from Africa. So we're not doing badly at all, meaning that it is, I've said several times that this is not when you have the biggest money that you are generous. You can have small money and be willing to help your neighbors. And that is the reason why Nigeria is being listed there as a generous country. But if you go to some of the countries that are recipient countries, you can see them, the red flags shows countries in South America, in India, in China, and Nigeria again is listed as a recipient country of donation and grants made by other countries. Democratic Republic of Congo and South Africa are leading countries in the world who are recipients of funds, especially for foundations, multilaterals, and bilaterals. So, let me talk majorly about, like I said, I'm going to focus largely on Nigeria because we have a lot of lessons to learn about what foundations have been doing in relation to development in Nigeria. And some of the very leading foundations, international foundations in Nigeria that are active today include the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Ford Foundation, Macarthur Foundation, and the Open Society Foundation. There are several others, international ones, but I said I wouldn't be able to dwell with all of them, but I've given some of the most, and those for which I have some information are the ones I'm going to talk about today. The Indigenous Nigerian Foundation include the T.Y. Danjuma Foundation, which I know is the first indigenous foundation in Nigeria. I may be wrong, but from the records, I know that T.Y. Danjuma has been the #1 foundation from the very beginning, followed by Aliko Dangote Foundation. We also have Dashmi Foundation, launched in 2021 by Kemi Adosun, and also the current Vice President of Nigeria, the New Nigerian Foundation, and then we have the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation. I'm not going to be able to name all of them, but we should note that most foundations in Nigeria tend to be established by the living Nigerians, those who are alive. the exception of the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation. It's probably the most foundations in Nigeria are established. So the issue of sustainability, which we talked about earlier on, is a big question, if so on and so forth. Because in other settings, foundations tend to be established by those who are no longer alive. So the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, which I said was established on the Bishop Awolowo died on May 9, 1987. I remember that day very well because I came out and read the newspaper and I bursted into tears because I told myself that is it possible for Chief Awolowo to die? And I made a statement, this country has died. And since then, I don't think the values for which I was trained at the University of Ife, for which I had primary and secondary education, those values that were very, they were very great in those days, have lost tremendous meaning today in Nigeria. So, this foundation was founded in 1992 by the family and friends, first to inaugurate a new chapter in the vision of our work for this country, which we would never allow to die. And then secondly, to sustain our exemplary leadership and to immortalize our over time. Because a few days ago, when I was preparing for this lecture, I called a number of young people around me and asked them, do you know Chief Macarthur Foundation? And I was surprised that not many of them said they knew Macarthur Foundation. I was astonished. And I said, because we have cancelled history from our educational system. And so the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation has a major role to play in ensuring that this Nigerian who lived for all, a visionary of all time, who built Nigeria and continues to lead the vision for Nigeria, his vision does not die. So, and that is why the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation is exemplary in the way they've handled this issue and they continue to prosper in Nigeria. So, let me walk you through some of the foundations. The first thing to note is that foundations work through endowments and assets. That means that they start with the little amount of money, they save the money, they bet the money, and then from there. So when Ford Foundation was established several years ago, it was established by Herdsmen Ford with just an initial sum of about $25,000. And today, the network worth of the Ford Foundation is about $16 billion from just investment and endowment building. The John D. and Petrie Macarthur Foundation started with initial 50,000 grants made in the US. Today, they have a current worth of $6.8 billion with offices in the United States of America, Nigeria, and in India. And they made substantial contribution to the development of this country. And then the Lucille and David Packard Foundation came to Nigeria and they started managing the part of the surviving estate of David Packard, one of the those that built the Packard Foundation. Today they have an asset of about $9 billion. Although they are no longer in Nigeria, they work in East Africa, but I think perhaps they are still very much interested in the work that we do in Nigeria. So these are foundations. The important work of the foundation is that for it to be sustainable over time, they need to be funded on the basis of endowments, asset building, so that whatever is being done today in Ford Foundation, the Macarthur Foundation, is just the profits from the assets that have been endowed. So, what are the motivation for private foundations? And you can see here a map of what people say about foundation: philanthropy, altruism, compassion, need to donate, problem solving, inspiration, charity, etc., etc. So many of these. If you ask the 250,000 leading foundations, what was their motivation for founding this foundation? These are some of the reasons they will elucidate. Meaning that it's selfless. It's something that they set up to build society, to help contribute to the development of societies. And when Africa and developing countries have some of the most daunting problems for development, you can see the role that foundations play in the development of developing countries. So this is very important. Support, kindness, heart, love, inspiration, benefactor to humanity, etc. are some of the motivation for which foundations are funded. So let me give you some sample mission statements of foundations, or those I know. The Fourth Foundation says they work with visionaries in the front line of social change. Visionaries in the front line of change. So when I worked with Fourth Foundation a couple of years back, that was one of the things I continue to remember. Because if they say they work with visionaries in the front line of social change, that means I'm also a visionary in the front line of social change, meaning that they are motivating everybody to work towards that social change. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation says they work to create a world where every person has the opportunity to live a healthy and protected life. Can you imagine that? They are thinking of the whole world, treating a new society. The Macarthur Foundation says to create a world that is more just, verdant, and peaceful. And the Open Society says to promote economic development that advances social and racial justice, sustainability, and democracy. And our own dear Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, a think tank devoted to the analysis of important policy problems. You can see these foundational statements are statements made to develop society, to grow development. And when I work for Fourth Foundation, and I've had a lot of interactions with foundations such as Macarthur Foundation, I think that have been they are the driving force for which I've lived. They are the reasons that drive whatever I do today because of the work I've had with both the Macarthur Foundation as well as the Fourth Foundation. So, foundations, and this was what the Fourth Foundation told me several years ago, 1992, when I was getting their first grant. They work where governments fail. They work in areas where government typically don't work. Human rights, social exclusion or inclusion, they include people, whereas whatever we do today, if we look at whatever Nigeria is doing, we are excluding people, we are excluding women, we are excluding racial groups. But foundations tend to bring us together. They tend to promote equality of all persons, regardless of who the person. They promote gender rights, equity, they promote children's rights, victim protection, cultural protection, and poverty alleviation. Areas that, those days when Obafemi Awolowo was campaigning, there's a word, I remember when he came, when I was a primary student at the University of Ife those days, he made a statement and said, he talked about egalitarianism, meaning that everybody should be born equal, we should have equal rights, we should have equal opportunities. Today, Nigerians don't have equal opportunities. And the governments are forgetting about equal opportunities for everyone, both white, whatever. And so this is what the foundations that work here. They work here to promote equal opportunity, to promote human rights, social inclusion, equality, gender rights, cultural protection. These are enduring principles that for which, if you don't have them, countries can never develop. And that's why you cannot underestimate the immense work the foundations are doing in terms of development. So these are the foundations in Nigeria, and I'm going to talk about them one by one. Fourth Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Macarthur Foundation, the Open Society Foundation. The Fourth Foundation came into Nigeria in 1958, and they have been there since then till today. That means that they witnessed Nigerian independence. They helped to build several NGOs and institutions, including institutions such as the IITA in Ibadan. And today, they have made up to 700 grants equivalent to $700 million in Nigeria, on unbroken tenure. When, during the Abacha regime, when multilaterals, bilaterals, and even many foundations were leaving Nigeria because of human rights abuse, the Fourth Foundation president at that time said that the Fourth Foundation would not leave Nigeria because they believe that it is in such times that the poor people of Nigeria needed the work of foundations. I was touched. I cried because of that statement. And since then, the Fourth Foundation has made tremendous contribution to the development of all facets: education, health, poverty alleviation, women development, and so on and so forth. And they have supported Nigeria's democracy and independence from then to now. In 1999, Fourth Foundation, and I had the opportunity to work for Fourth Foundation between 2010 and 2015. And one of the things they kept talking about was equality of all persons. And so I am very excited the work, and I believe that the country will forever appreciate the work that the Fourth Foundation has done in Nigeria from 1958 to 2022, as I talk to you now. The Macarthur Foundation is another leading foundation in Nigeria. They came to Nigeria in 1998, 1989, and they are still there to now. And I have the face of my dear friend, Dr. Kole Sotima, here, because he's the face of Macarthur Foundation in Nigeria. He's a visionary, a patriot of all kinds. And I've known him because I do know that whatever Macarthur does, he relates it to Nigerian development. He doesn't just want to make grants for the sake of grants, but he makes grants to correct some of the loopholes and the gaps that we have in relation to Nigerian development. He awarded grants, population and health, secondary and tertiary education, anti-corruption and criminal justice system, democracy, electricity that they are currently doing, and school feeding. Every single aspect of Nigeria have been taught by the Macarthur Foundation. So we are extremely grateful, and I'm one of those that can leave a clapping hand for the Macarthur Foundation for the work they've done in Nigeria. Also, the Bill and Medical Gates Foundation. They came in 2006 to Nigeria, and they are still there. They've been working. I'm saying 2020, that's a mistake, it's supposed to be 2006 to date. They've not left Nigeria. And they have made substantial grants, a total about 400 million naira in the areas of health and development, maternal and child health, which is my field, polio eradication, vaccines, uptake and development, and then improve agriculture and poverty alleviation. Remember, polio was a big problem, and Melinda Gates took it up from the very beginning, and they wanted to work in that area. And I'm happy to say that with the work of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in collaboration with the federal government and all that, polio is now regarded as a thing of the past. Nigeria has been recorded to be a zero-free country, which is due to exceptional work done by the foundation such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So you can say that, using Nigeria as an example, these foundations are making tremendous contribution to the development of developing countries. Now, the Open Society Foundation, Osiwa. Again, I have not worked with them, but I do know that they came to Nigeria in 2001, and they have been there up to now. And they offer grants to promote tolerance, transparency, democratic governance, and human rights. And today, I think that they are actually one of the foundations that are interested in developing and building transparent democratic process in Nigeria. And to date, from 2001 to this date, they have awarded about $37 million grants in Nigeria. And some of the works that are done are spoken to by the picture that you see, the right side of this presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've just presented those 4 international foundations. And what I have for them is a big clap for taking Nigeria's development to its next level, for supporting every good thing, every good step that government has done in this country. And to that extent, you can imagine what would have happened indeed without the foundation. I know how many civil societies that were established by these foundations, who are supported by this foundation over the years, which who have worked in areas where the government can actually not be strong enough to work. So let me quickly talk about the strategic advantages of what do they have over multilaterals, for example. What do they have over bilaterals? Because I've tended to, I know, for example, that it could be very difficult, and some multilaterals and bilaterals, we have some other motives apart from what countries are interested in. But the foundations always work, in my opinion, in the wrong, between the context of developing countries, between the context of government policies, to ensure that their policies, the policies that we work on, are synchronous with those of the government. And they tend to form long-term alliances and partnerships. You'll be surprised. I told you some of the foundations like Ford and Macarthur Foundation have been there on a long-term basis. And I do believe that because they are there, they will continue to be there for a longer period of time. And they are less bureaucratic in grant making. They are driven by goal-oriented social change values. That is, they want to see society change. They want to promote, the better ideas. They want to elevate corruption. They want to ensure that whatever resources that Nigeria has is used to the benefit of people. They want to elevate poverty. They want to promote good education for everybody, so that governance becomes easy. Because once education is there, governance becomes very easy. And I want to say, in the best of my opinion, in the best of my knowledge, they do not have any hidden agendas. They are never politicians, neither do they support the wider agenda that leads to global difficulties. So that's another advantage that the foundations have. And then they also focus on alleviating gender inequality and promoting social justice, which are issues that government often don't try to promote. So the core niche of foundation is value creation. I've had, anytime I wanted to make a grant at the Ford Foundation, you say, what is the value? What is the value addition of that grant you want to make? So that is the greater niche of foundations. They are there to create value, to define the value, to create it, to deliver, and to sustain it over time. And that, to me, and that is a lesson for even developing countries. Some of the challenges that developing countries have is because of their inability to develop and integrate creation of values, inability to create values. And therefore, by working a foundation and seeing them create value, it is one way you can transpose some form of social justice system and development to a developing country. So, let me give you some concerns, and I'll be ending in a few minutes' time, about foundations. First is whether the mission and the vision statement made by the founding fathers that led to the founding of foundations can be perpetuated. I'm not talking about funding this time around. Are those who are managing the foundation at this time in time able to go back into memory lane and learn the reasons for which various foundations and continue that process? Are they likely to be affected by some of the shenanigans we are currently having in today's society? When Ford Foundation, for example, created a mission that we are working with visionaries of in front of social change, with the current managers of the foundation, the Ford Foundation, able to continue with that mission? That's a question that everybody really wants to grapple with. And then the second is on the focus between poor and the rich. Are foundations addressing poverty compared to the rich? Will they say that they came to Nigeria and what they are doing is to promote and to work with rich people? Because governance tends to circulate around the rich people. Are they going to be tempted to the situation whereby what foundations do are also with rich people, ignoring the poor? And this is to be found, this is to be identified through the type of grants and to the people they work with. And to the best of my knowledge, most of the foundations that I've seen work in the area of poverty. And then having the immature and inexperienced work in the foundations. The issues of accountability also arise within the work of foundation developing countries, because they may be learning from what the developing countries are doing, and may have the wrong managers who may be not accountable. The lack of standards. How do we maintain standards in the way the foundations have worked over the years? What of individual versus group benefits? Who benefits from the foundation work, the region? And then a lot of people have said that foundation giving is undemocratic, in the sense that they decide who they give the money to without really following a democratic process and what it grants. And then, most importantly, foundation funding is often small, and they are unable to achieve social change at scale most of the time. They give small grants, and we know now that the argument is that it's only federal government or the governments of the countries that can achieve social change at scale. So how, to what extent, will foundation funding not, so to say, contaminate? Will it cause social change? Will it allow government to forget about that issue and therefore not work in achieving social change at scale? And then finally, the business ethos versus a foundation ethos. To what extent are these protected? So these are some of the concerns that people have had about foundations. But nevertheless, if you look at overall, the foundations are still making tremendous contribution to development in developing countries. And it is by the presentation, which is less than 25-30 minutes, it is difficult to really share and explain all that foundations do in terms of development in developing countries. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, I believe very strongly that foundations have played and will continue to play major roles in Nigeria's development. And with international foundations leading the pathway to Nigeria's social and democratic development, I envision greater roles also for indigenous foundations to even do better in rejigging the country's development and propelling it going forward. I therefore congratulate the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation on this 30th year anniversary for blazing the trail, for allowing us to continue to focus on the country's problems. And I pray that this foundation will continue to foster the giant steps that the great icon left behind. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I could have my screen. Oh, okay, there I am. Professor Friday Okonofor, keynote speaker today. Thank you very much for that. Tour de force on the role of foundations in developing countries. Thank you very much. There's a lot to chew on, a lot to take away from that truly excellent presentation. I am sure that during our panel discussion and following the Q&A session, there will be quite a number of questions that potentially will be coming your way. But thank you for leaving us with some of these excellent nuggets. You've laid out for us the distinctions between foundations and the total number of foundations worldwide. I had absolutely no idea that there were about 250,000 foundations worldwide. You've explained to us why foundations exist. Working with visionaries in the front line of social change is one of the mantras of a leading foundation. Another one exists to create a just society. Others exist to promote economic development. That again allows societies to grow, and then others work where societies, or rather where governments fail. I like the part where you talked about the niches foundations, and that is to add value, to create value. But the challenge again is not just creating it, but also delivering and sustaining, which again can be a huge challenge for foundations. Sustainability, as Ambassador Awolowo Dosuma said earlier, is a huge challenge. And you've left us with this thought again about aligning the vision and the mission statements, and again, linking that to sustainability. Thank you very much. You could hang tight with us. I'm sure that our audience, as well as our panelists, would like to come back to you in a few moments with some questions. Before we continue, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence of some very special guests who are joining us all the way from South Africa, where it is actually late tonight. They're not a few hours ahead of us in Nigeria. Please, it is my privilege, it's my honor to acknowledge the presence of the former president of South Africa, His Excellency, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, and he joins us with his dear wife, Her Excellency Zanele Mbeki. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for joining us this evening. What a wonderful honor to have you with us. If I could just ask our audience, wherever you are, to just give them a very warm virtual welcome, that would be very much appreciated. Well, we're going to hear from a number of distinguished panelists who, again, will be not only responding to what Professor Friday Okonofor has just shared with us, but they'll also provide us with some insights about what their foundations are doing. And we have a few of them lined up for you. I am sure that, again, as our previous speakers have, they will inspire us with the work that they do, with the ideas that they propose, with a simple goal of doing one thing, and that is making a difference in the lives of others. Our first panelist is Max Bokwana, CEO of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. He's been a senior partner of law firms Bokwana Loon and Cornelian and Bokwana Burns, where his areas of practice involves constitutional and administrative law. He was appointed by the Ministry of Justice as a vice chair of the National Forum for the Preparation and Drafting of the Legal Practice Act to unify and transform the legal profession. He occupies various leadership positions in the legal profession as the General Secretary and later President of NADEL, that is the National Association of Democratic Lawyers. He has served also as chairperson for 3 terms of the Law Society of South Africa and a chairperson of the Boards of Control of Attorneys Fidelity Fund. He's currently the Vice President of SADC Lawyers Association and a Central Bureau member of IADL, the International Association of Democratic Lawyers. He has acted on various occasions as a judge of the High Court, and he is a visiting fellow of Rhodes University for Constitutional and International Human Rights Law. In other words, he is a legal luminary and a heavyweight in that regard, but more importantly, he's here to speak to us today in his capacity as the CEO of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, which is doing an awesome job in South Africa. Max, welcome to the program.
Victor, thank you very much, my brother, and the excellencies and honored guests that are here today. Thanks very much to the HALLO Foundation for this kind invite on what I consider to be an overdue convening of all of us. I also wish to join my fellow discussants in congratulating the foundation for reaching the 30-year milestone. Even speaking from the southern tip of Africa, we are also inspired by the lessons bestowed on us by Chief Awo as an example of courage, dedication, drive, and self-reliance as a foundation upon which we can build a better Africa. I must just make a disclosure that our patron President Thabo Mbeki is the proud recipient of the HALLO Foundation Leadership Award. But I also need to indicate that our own foundation is the beneficiary of the generosity of both General Dajumba Foundation and Tony Elumelu Foundation. And therefore I feel privileged to be here with all of you. But as we have indicated at the beginning, unlike our Western and Asian counterparts, the foundations in Africa and the developing world have an important role to play in our countries to defeat the scourge of conflict, of poverty, the burden of disease, the exclusion and continued oppression of women and underdevelopment. If the foundations don't do this themselves, at least they've got a responsibility to make sure that they add these things in the consciousness of those who wield political and economic power. And this will be the case in our continent for a long time. So the African foundations, like others in the developing world, must respond to a number of issues. Firstly, that we need to look at in our own continent is the death of thought leadership. The continent yearns for a new type of change agents who intrinsically understand problems of our continent and are prepared to craft solutions whilst creating new knowledge. As the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, we seek to play a critical role in this area of developing thought leadership for Africa's development. And this is through the Thabo Mbeki African School for Public and International Affairs. And it's something that we can engage our colleagues about at a later stage. But the second point that I think the foundations in our continent must look at is the ongoing crisis of misgovernance, which requires sober, patriotic, and third-party voices who are not necessarily interested in contesting political power, but seek to train, guide, and cajole future leaders of our continent to be the change agents that this continent needs. As a result, our own foundation is quite focused on the work of the African Union and seek to develop knowledge out of the vast work that has already been done by the African Union, but at the same time ensure that a number of policies, programs, protocols, and other decisions are turned into practical programs that have got a positive impact to our continent. But at the same time, we continue with the peace efforts because it's almost impossible to talk about development in environments of conflict. The third area which I think our foundations need to look at is the fact that neither public nor private sector is capable of economically absorbing millions of young Africans into formal employment and turn them from the youth bulge ready to be used as a new Arab Spring into a youth dividend through entrepreneurships, new skills, and the new ways of exploiting Africa's vast resources, and in the end to create another layer of social entrepreneurs who will be catalysts for Africa's development. The fourth area I think that some of our colleagues have covered is the whole area of declining and sometimes stagnating standard of education. And the foundations are in a better position to be able to use their agility and quick decision-making process to be able to intervene in this area, especially these days where advanced technology is the order of the day. Our foundation in this regard has explored the possibility of exposing, in particular, young students on technology, but infuse the use of technology with principles and values, in particular, the values of self-reliance. The fifth area that I think has also been covered is the fact that our countries are inflicted by huge burden of disease, and many of our governments are unable to cope with this. And therefore, we sit in a position where some of the foundations are able to make a timeous intervention from time to time, and they are able to find not only a space for curing of diseases, but also through advocacy and preventative mechanisms. And lastly, Chair, I think this issue of philanthropy, as it has been indicated from what Professor Okanufo was indicating, it's quite clear that there's a huge reliance amongst us as Africans from foreign foundations in terms of the support.
Yeah, we lost
Looks like
the voice.
we,
Yes.
looks like we're, it looks like we're experiencing a short outage there. Max, if you just hold tight for us, I'm sure we will reconnect shortly if you can still hear us. Kindly bear with us. We'll give our panelists a few moments to queue back in. Okay, I'll keep a close eye on the screen here. Please, as soon as we have Max back on, if we could create a split screen so that I can have visibility on that. Let me just quickly, for the sake of time, as we wait for him to join us, again, he's made some excellent points here, which are certainly worth the review. The fact that there's a dearth of thought leadership on the African continent driving development. And I think there's a lot to take away from that and to also unpack. He's talked about the work of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation in key areas, focusing primarily on the best work of the African Union. In other words, translating, taking vision and mission and translating that into development impact on the ground, as well as addressing declining and stagnating standards of education, as well as health. I'm going to check and see if we have Max back with us, and if not, I will come back to you in just a few seconds. Thank you. Do we have Max back online? I can just be sent a short message here letting me know. Okay, I deeply regret the challenges that we have. Quite a number of our panelists have talked earlier about accelerating development through digital platforms. We can see the reason why. Max, I see that you're back with us. I'm glad to have you back.
Now you can understand, Victor, the problems of underdevelopment.
We just need to accelerate our digital platforms. My brother, back to you.
No, thank you very much. I just wanted to finish off where I was dealing with the philanthropy in our own continent. And I think it's important, therefore, that many outstanding persons in our own continent provide support, financial and otherwise, in ensuring that the work of the number of foundations, which is very, very critical for our development, actually succeeds. Both in human and material support is, in this instance, required. This will ensure that we will not have agendas imposed from other continents in terms of the work that we are supposed to be doing. Just in conclusion, therefore, I think our foundations, as we sit around here, provide a safe space to deal with issues of good governance and policy influence. They provide the non-threatening entities to enhance social progress and rejuvenate economic growth. And they are also a necessary catalyst to challenge sterile thinking on politics, economy, and social progress. In the final analysis, I think we as the African foundations, we need to have dialogues of this nature amongst ourselves to look at the challenges that are facing our continent and help build people-to-people relationship, like the relationship that can be built amongst the peoples of Nigeria and the peoples of South Africa, who can lead the success of this continent and not necessarily rely on governance. Secondly, we can use our collective and individual strengths to design and champion programs to deal with our respective countries' developmental needs. And lastly, to support and complement one another in our respectful endeavors. And in conclusion, Chair, I think our problem is that we adopted a stance where we no longer recognize one another. We meet less and we talk less to one another. So if we fail to meet, fail to talk, and fail to act together, our problems multiplies and ours remain a dark continent. This is the reason why ourselves at the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, both inspired by our own patron, President Mbeki, and the board of directors, and many of the activists and volunteers that work with us, are only convinced that we will close our foundation the day Africa is developed, the day Africa is prosperous, at peace with itself and the world, occupying a rightful place amongst nations of the world with dignity. I think what we are doing today is the beginning of an important work, that we are here meeting, we are here talking, but we need to start acting now. Thank you very much for the invite.
Max Bukwana, the CEO of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. Max, thank you so much for your invigorating thoughts and ideas. You've packed a whole lot into a very, very short period of time. And again, there's a lot to unpack here. We talked about the dearth of thought leadership to begin with. And I love that, as well as the you connected that also towards the end here, where you says that foundations are a necessary catalyst to challenging sterile thinking. That's a loaded statement there. If we could just mute our microphones, please, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. You mentioned the fact that foundations are a necessary catalyst to challenge sterile thinking, but there are two other things that I'd love to be able to quickly highlight in what you said. You said we no longer recognize one another, and that Africa's problems will remain, if we refuse to see each other, talk to each other, meet, as well as work together. What a wonderful challenge for us as Africans. And let me just take that another step further, considering that the Thabo Mbeki Foundation exists to actualize the vision and the mission of the African Union. Right now, we're talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is designed to accelerate the work of integration. I think we need to bring that again to the work of foundations. Ladies and gentlemen, what an excellent panel discussion there with Max Bukwana. Thank you very, very much. Please stay with us because I'm sure our audience will be coming back to you with a few questions in a few moments. Our next panelist is Dr. Annette Akinshite. She is the CEO of the Sickle Cell Foundation, a consultant public health physician, a teacher, and a broadcaster. Annette is the CEO and a member of the board of directors of the Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria. Sickle cell is a disease that disproportionately affects millions of Nigerians and Africans, and this is definitely an area of much need. Dr. Annette Akinshite was a director of Public Health Department of the Federal Ministry of Health for many years and has represented the federal government of Nigeria at several fora the world over. As a public health physician, Akinshite has worked in every level of government in Nigeria, from local, state, to federal levels, and even at a global level, where she has contributed tremendously to World Health Organizations, including the WHO. She has served as a fellow in Geneva and as a UN Cares facilitator at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Annette Akinshite, CEO, Sickle Cell Foundation. Annette, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you very much indeed. And I thank the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation for inviting me to this auspicious occasion. I'm really privileged. I feel privileged. I feel very, very honored. Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to share my screen, if you don't mind, Victor. Okay, so we'll quickly pick up my presentation, if I find it. Please bear with me.
The tech team will support you in a few moments.
Okay, I'll be glad. Thank you.
Kindly give her access.
I'm actually trying to share.
She can share our screen.
I can share my screen, but I'm looking for my presentation on my screen now. I have a PowerPoint presentation I'd like to share. I can't find it. Okay, let's see this. This is technology really, really, really trying to mess me up. Okay. Files. No. Advanced. No. And I saw my presentation earlier. Victor, you please take someone else and let me come back, please.
Okay.
I want to find my presentation.
I will oblige you with that, and we'll come back to you in just a few moments. Okay, I'm going to take you off screen.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. As we try to work through those technical glitches, which tend to happen when we least expect them, we'll come back to Dr. Annette Akinshite following our next panelist, who, by the way, is Mrs. Ifeanyiwa Ugochukwu, the CEO of the Tony Elumelu Foundation, Africa's leading philanthropy empowering African entrepreneurs to create jobs on the continent. Mrs. Ugochukwu is a lawyer, and she joined the foundation as its Director of Partnerships and Evaluations, a role she has held for 2 years. In this position, she has developed the foundation's institutional framework for financial and value partnerships to scale the impact of the $100 million TEF Entrepreneurship Program, beyond its initial target to empower 10,000 entrepreneurs. And if you've been following the Illumino Foundation, either on social media or in the press, you can see that a lot of their beneficiaries are some of the most excited and exciting young Africans on the continent. So well done for the wonderful work that you're doing in that regard. It's really a pleasure to have you today. I'm just going to end this by saying, because I know you have a tremendous amount of accomplishments, but for reasons of time, let me just end this introduction by saying that you hold a postgraduate degree in business and executive coaching from the Integral African Institute, Cape Town, and a Bachelor of Law from the University of Wales, and a Nigerian law school degree. She was listed in the second publication of the 100 Most Influential African Women in 2020 by Avance Media. This is Ifeanyi Ugochukwu. It's a wonderful pleasure having you with us. The virtual stage is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so very much for having me, and good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to stand on all existing protocols. As I said, it is such an honor to be addressing you all today. And let me start by conveying the goodwill of our founder, Mr. Tony Elumelu, to the organizers of this laudable event, and of course, all the guests here present today from around the world. Truly an inspiring evening. Truly, it's been like 1 minute, not like 2 hours. And the discourse has been very engaging as we mark the 30th anniversary of the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, probably one of the earliest foundations in our country. I would like to crouch my discussions and my discourse around the 3 pillars that Her Excellency Ambassador Awolowo Dosunmu mentioned in her keynote speech. And she talked about sustainability, unique selling point, and self-appraisal. Indeed, these 3 pillars is what any foundation must be built on for success. And I want to say something. I want to say that where we're all going to as foundations in Africa is that there will come a day when Africa as a continent, Nigeria as a country, would no longer need our services as foundation. And we would then be looking for less fortunate countries who we can then help. The same way we know that foundations across the globe are focused on Africa and emerging economies. And this is exactly why at the Tony Elumelu Foundation, we decided to focus on entrepreneurship empowerment, because we firmly believe that 98% of Africa's problems, of Nigerian problems, are as a result of poverty. 98% of our problems are possible business opportunities waiting for entrepreneurs to find the solutions. All the great economies of the world, Japan, China, the United States, Germany, were built on the back of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are the job creators. Entrepreneurs are the consumers. When you have a strong and robust small and medium enterprise sector in any country, you have a healthy country. All the problems we see in infant mortality, insecurity, terrorism, all our problems are as a result of lack of economic opportunity. And so we picked as a foundation entrepreneurship empowerment as our contribution alongside our compatriots in other foundations as a way to catalyze economic growth across African continent. So just a bit about the foundation. In 2015, our founder launched a $100 million commitment from his own family wealth to identify, mentor, train, and fund 10,000 African entrepreneurs across all 54 African countries over 10 years. And this is why we call it the largest private philanthropy focused on entrepreneurship and empowerment, because we are truly Pan-African and we have entrepreneurs and beneficiaries in all 54 African countries. And so, centers on we have trained and funded over 15,000 young Africans across all 54 African countries in all sectors. So we are sector agnostic. Every year, January to March, and incidentally, our application portal just closed, we have a call for applications, and we receive thousands of applications. This year alone, we received over 680,000 applications to our program. And these young entrepreneurs are the backbone of Africa's economy. They're the lifeblood. Young Africans with amazing ideas who are raring to get their entrepreneurial journey started, raring to get them in the door. But unfortunately, oftentimes do not have the capital, nor do they have the training that they need. And that is where we come in. We provide them training. Our online proprietary training program has been likened to a mini MBA and has been shown to be critical in helping entrepreneurs avoid those landmines that their counterparts may not have the information to avoid. And once we're done with the training, we don't say goodbye, good luck. We give you a $5,000 non-returnable seed capital that will help you start your journey. Otherwise, the training is just theory. And so we have found through the years that this has proved to be a tried and tested model, a credible medium for spreading entrepreneurship across the African continent. A recent PwC study showed that out of the 15,000 entrepreneurs that we've empowered since 2015, they have gone on to create over 400,000 direct and indirect jobs. So when we come to the issue of nation building, job creation is not the responsibility of government. And the big conglomerates simply do not have the bandwidth. It is the small and medium enterprise. And even in countries like Germany, 70% of the jobs in Germany is provided by the small and medium enterprises. And so as a continent, as a country, if we can cater to the most important demographic, and that is the small and medium enterprises, then we know that we are on the surest route to economic development and prosperity. One more issue, and that brings us to the principle of advocacy, which has been mentioned by several speakers this evening, that foundations are really responsible for advocating for good governance, advocating for the enabling environment. Because we all know that identifying a problem is the first step to solving the problem. And so when studies show us that 80% of the small and medium enterprises in Africa are actually women and the youth, we know that this demographic is the most critical demographic as far as Africa's development is concerned. And so the reason our entrepreneurship program is arguably the most youth-focused is because it is a direct response to the transformation that Africa needs. We have continued to demonstrate a commitment to foster gender inclusivity. This has been progressively reflected with our gender mix, not just in our workforce. The foundation is 85% female, in our mentors, in our alumni. It is a critical part of the training because we know that when you empower a woman, you empower a nation. And so this shows us that the work of foundations across Africa is you cannot begin to quantify. A wise saying says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And what we want to see, and I believe that this discourse is a great foundation for it, is for foundations to begin to work more inclusively together. For us to understand that, we mustn't reinvent the wheel. For us to leverage each other's strengths and weaknesses and also come in to bridge the gap. And so I want to begin to say that in Nigeria, as well as in Africa, we're increasingly seeing collaboration between foundations, development finance institutions, and governments. And that is the principle of Africapitalism in action. Africapitalism is the economic philosophy that was developed by our founder, Mr. Tony Elumelu. It is the economic philosophy that says that Africa's progress, Africa's development lies in the hands of the private sector. Civil society, philanthropies, working hand in hand with governments, development finance institutions, as well as foreign governments. This is the collaboration that we need to create the Africa of our dreams, an Africa that is equal partners with the rest of the world, an Africa where the burgeoning youth population of Africa have economic opportunity on their own, looking for that economic opportunity elsewhere. An Africa where there is good governance and where, as one of the publications of the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation said, that the general well-being of people is
We seem to be having a little bit of a audio problem there. Hi, Ifeanyi. I'm not sure if you can hear us, but we are having a little bit of an audio glitch. It may be a bandwidth issue, but if we will give you a few more minutes to come back live, just as we did earlier with Max. Kindly bear with us, members of our audience. We hope to have her back in just a few seconds.
Sorry, Victor, I want to believe that most of my discourse was heard.
Actually, we lost you for about 30 to 35 seconds, so whatever you said back then, you can backtrack and lay it on us. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I was just wrapping up in saying that, you know, as foundations in Nigeria, foundations across Africa, we have a collective vision, a collective
Unfortunately, Ifeanyi, we seem to be having a persistent problem here. I'm glad that you had already almost completed your presentation and you were just giving us your final thoughts. But again, as with other panelists, you've given us food for thought. You've said that Nigeria's biggest problem is poverty. I don't know that there's anybody who would argue with you on that, and that entrepreneurs are the drivers of economic opportunity and prosperity. Congratulations to the Tony Aluminum Foundation for catalyzing growth among the youth in all 54 countries of Africa, 15,000 so far, with an attendant spillover effect of those 15,000 impacting the lives of 400,000 other people through direct and indirect jobs. You've identified the need for advocacy, identifying problems, because that is what foundations do, they solve problems, and empowering women. Because once you do, when you empower women, you power a nation. And as a good friend of mine, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, likes to say, no bird ever flies with one wing. Our institutions, our foundations, our nations need to fly on the wings of both men and women. Thank you again for sharing with us about Afrocapitalism, development lying in the hands of the private sector cooperating with the public sector and foundations. Together, collaborating inclusively, we can accelerate development and indeed create the Africa of our dreams. So sorry about the technological challenges again, we need to ramp up our digital architecture across the continent. We're not there yet, but we will get there soon. We thank you again for your very succinct presentation today. Thank you. So we'll go on to our next speaker, or rather panelist, and that's Dr. Hope Usieta, the CEO of the Leventis Foundation, who holds a PhD in zoology with a specialization in conservation science from the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom, and a master's degree in conservation biology from the A.G. Leventis Ornithological Research Institute at the University of Jos in Nigeria. He is particularly interested in identifying strategies that can increase local and global food production at minimal cost to the environment. Dr. Hope Usieta, welcome, and over to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Victor Olodokun, for the kind introduction. Let me share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you once again for the kind introduction. My name is Hope Usieta. I'm the Executive Director of Leventis Foundation, Nigeria. I want to start by thanking the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation for inviting me to give this talk on the role of foundations in the agricultural sector and the challenges and achievements that are relevant to the work of the Leventis Foundation in Nigeria. I also want to seize this opportunity to congratulate the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation on the occasion of its 30th anniversary. I want to wish them more years of great impact. So for my talk, I'll give a snapshot of the gaps in the Nigerian agricultural sector. I will highlight the roles of the Leventis Foundation in the agricultural sector. I will also reference some of the challenges and the achievements we've recorded so far. So, despite the gains made at increasing productivity in the agricultural sector in Nigeria, there are still some gaps to be closed. One of such gaps is the inability to meet the domestic food requirements, as well as our inability to export at quality levels to meet required market success. So these gaps are mainly due to productivity challenges that are driven by input inefficiency, not enough seeds, fertilizer, and irrigation. So I will be telling you how the Leventis Foundation has been intervening to reduce some of these gaps. I wouldn't dwell much on the role of foundations. I want to thank our keynote speaker, Professor Okonofua, for providing deep insight on that. But generally, foundations in the agricultural sector should aim to support government policy on agriculture. Also, they should work to intervene in building productive capacity for practicing farmers through training and internship, as exemplified by the Leventis Foundation. Also drive the development of new knowledge in the sector So the Leventis Foundation, we've been promoting sustainability in the agricultural sector for 33 years now. We do this through training in vocational agriculture, where we've established campuses for farmers and youth to spend about 9 to 10 months undergoing intensive training in agriculture. And at the end of the program, we also have our extension program, for which our ex-trainees and practicing farmers benefit from. So our training also has the entrepreneurial component, where the trainees acquire skills to start their own businesses and then go on to build sustainable livelihoods. So we've done this through the establishment of training schools in Nigeria and in Ghana. So far, we've established 6 training schools in Nigeria in different agroecological zones. We have a school in Kano State, we have in Kaduna, we have in the Federal Capital Territory, we have one in Gombe State, we have a school in Oshun, that's at Ilesha, and a school in Idoani in Ondo State. We have 4 centers in Ghana as well. So these centers, they specialize in training small-scale farmers to improve productivity, and while also considering their impact on the environment. So like I mentioned, our core area is training. So farmers acquire these skills through practice. I want to mention that our training is 80% practical. The 9 months to 10 months spent on campus is essentially devoted to practicals. 80% of that time is on practicals. And each trainee goes through the 4 technical departments in the schools. We have the crop and agroforestry department, where they go through all the mandate crops in the different locations where the schools are located. They go through they learn also animal production, to include poultry, fisheries, cattle rearing, and things like that. We also learn agricultural engineering on campus. So the interesting bit also is that aspect of enterprise development, where they learn how to add value to their farm produce. So they don't just end their production at the primary level. They go beyond that, as such, enhancing their income earning capacity. So I mentioned that we train the beneficiaries of our program on methods that will improve their yield, while also considering the environment. We have specific trainings on minimum or zero tillage. It's been the practice that some farmers, prior to coming to our schools, they just expend resources where they don't need to. For instance, studies have shown that you don't really need to reach sorghum to get the required yield. So we've tried to encourage that, and in doing that, you also reduce your impact on the environment. So we also teach them how to amend soils in their systems while increasing productivity. So we also train on innovative ways, modern farming, the greenhouse farming, and the trainees are also exposed to processing practices to add value to their produce, and as such earn more from their farming experience. So even within the schools, our trainees, they learn on family planning, health and nutrition, social and civic responsibility. We also collaborate and with other institutions and engage in some form of research. One of such collaborations that is ongoing is with the University of Cambridge, where we're trying to synthesize evidence for the effectiveness of the different interventions we have in agriculture. So, and beyond our intervention in the agricultural sector, we also intervene in providing scholarships to Nigerians up to PhD levels. Some go to Harvard to do their PhD. We provide scholarship for students to go to Athens to study MBA at the Albert Graduate School. We also provide scholarship for undergraduates to go to Costa Rica to study sustainable agriculture. And we also support museums in Nigeria and elsewhere. For example, the Obafemi Awolowo Museum of Natural History at Ife is supported by the Leventis Foundation. We also support conservation work in Nigeria through our support for NCF, and as well as support the AP Leventis Ornithological Research Institute based at the University of Jos, where we've trained master students, many of whom have gone on to do their PhDs. So we have all of those programs going on. So yes, to talk about some of the challenges that we've experienced, I think this is common to many NGOs. It's the problem of finance, and for us, it comes in two forms: the operational finance and finance to our ex-trainees at the end of their program. Let me mention that the way the foundation schools are set up, it's a collaboration with the state government, where the schools are located, and the foundation. So the state governments are expected to contribute their own part of the annual budget for running the schools. Sometimes these contributions don't come when they are required, so that's a challenge. And for our ex-trainees, at the end of their program, they've learned this important skill, vocational skill, the entrepreneurial aspect of agriculture. So they now have to go on to start up their own farm. There's that challenge. The way the program was set up is that the state government will provide starter packs for them to set up their own businesses. Sometimes this does not happen. Yeah, it's a challenge. So we also have the problem of capacity. At the moment, the C schools, they have capacity to take in 100 students per year. And sometimes we get applications running into thousands. So we have that challenge. And I'll come on to how we're managing this as we go along. So we also have the challenge of evolution of applicant types. When the foundation was set up more than 30 years ago, it was aimed at the rural farmers, but now it's changing, such that you have graduates applying to come onto the program. I recall, say 2 years ago, more than 50% of the over 5,000 applications we got were graduates of universities. So this evolution of applicants is also presenting a challenge in the way we run the program. And there's the challenge of gender. There's a gender gap in participants. We don't have many women coming on to the program. But we'll try to encourage that. We'll ensure where we have we want to ensure equal number of women, but even when they come on, sometimes they don't stay through the program. So, so our achievements so far, given all the challenges, so in our 33 years, we've trained more than 29,000 youths in sustainable agriculture and agribusiness. More than a recent survey we did 4 years ago showed that about 65% of these youth are still, and farmers are still into agricultural business, and maybe about 15% have gone on to seek employment elsewhere. So some of the achievements so far, when we started in 1988, we had 2 schools, one in Oshun and the other in Kaduna. Now we've expanded to 6 because of how beneficial the program has been. Many state governments have approached us to establish these schools. So we've also tried to meet that challenge of starter pack by instituting our own micro credit facility for which our heirs trainees can benefit. So with the challenge of finance, we are looking at we are devising other ways of raising monies, funds that we can plow back into the program. We now aim to sell our services. We have trainings that we offer consultancies. We've also commercialized some of our activities. We recently obtained our NAFDAC number for our smoked fish, I think, which is about the best in this part of the country or West Africa as a whole. So we have all these commodities that we are rolling out into the market to help us generate funds that we can plow back into training more farmers. So we've also gone into focused partnership and to expand our impact. Now we have core members, NYSC core members spending their 1 year at our schools and learning sustainable agriculture and agribusiness. Like I mentioned, we are doing value addition across most of our products. We're establishing market outlets for our products. We have one at our headquarters, and we recently opened a shop at the FCT Secretariat. So these are some of the achievements we've recorded so far in 33 years of existence. I want to conclude by saying that we've contributed to sustainable agricultural development in Nigeria and in Ghana. We've improved livelihoods for youths, farmers, and the rural dwellers. We also promote environmental protection through the different supports we have going on for conservation-related NGOs. So thank you very much for listening. Once again, congratulations to the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation. Thank you.
Dr. Hope Usieta, thank you very much for your contribution and intervention as a panelist. It's gratifying to note that the Leventis Group has done so much in the field of agriculture, and I must admit I had the opportunity of serving as the Group Public Relations Manager of the Leventis Group back in 1987. That was in another life. So it's good to see you. 6 training schools rather, in Kano, Kaduna, FCT, Gombe, Osun, Ondo State, and 4 centers in Ghana with a total impact over the years of 28,000 youth. That is absolutely incredible. Excellent work in agriculture, the provision of educational scholarships, and the name of the game is adding value to what we have in abundance. Land, water, and human resources. And as you rightly pointed out, we must scale agriculture, we must empower, we must develop a robust value chain. Only then can we unleash the entrepreneurial capacity that millions of Nigerians and indeed Africans have in that space. Thank you very much for your intervention. We will now go back to our previous panelist who we had to skip for some technical problems. I already introduced her earlier, so I will not repeat my introduction of her. She is very well introduced. So we'll now go back to Dr. Annette Akinshite, the CEO of the Sickle Cell Foundation of Nigeria. Over to you, Annette.
Okay, so good. Thank you very much, Victor. I'm sharing my screen now. So like I said at the beginning, mine is different. I'm focusing on the health sector, and then I'm honing on Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria. Sickle Cell Foundation is a different kind of foundation. It's not a grant-making foundation. So I'll speak to that shortly. But to set the stage, I'll just introduce what sickle cell is. Sickle cell is a disorder of the blood. It's the most common blood disorder in the whole world. And Nigeria happens to be the country with the highest burden of this disease in the world. So very quickly, let's look at, I want to start my video so I can be seen. Good. Sharing this slide just to let us know the kind of confusion out there about what a foundation is, what it is not, what they do, what they don't do, and all that. Of course, a lot of clarity has gone into this from the keynote speaker and from other speakers today. But if you see foundation here in very faint text, there's a misconception sometimes about what foundations are and what they do. And I will experience that at Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, as you see through my slides. Most of my slides are not text, they're pictures, so I'll fly through them very quickly. I'm looking at the health sector. What's the role of foundations in the health sector? So I look at that and then holding on Sickle Cell Foundation. So foundations indeed exist for public good. That is established because government cannot do it all. And then what do? Foundations play a developmental role in the health sector as they do in other sectors. As many others have spoken today, they're public foundations. We are a public foundation, Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria. We source our funding from the public and also from grant-making foundations and the private foundations. Of course, the private foundations such as T.Y. Danduma Foundation, Awolowo Foundation, and so on. These are the foundations that source their own funding from their own money and from entities, but not from the public. So again, let's look at the health sector as a whole. In terms of this, the health sector, in what areas are foundations in Nigeria involved in the health sector? Both local and international foundations. They're involved in all aspects of health. Healthcare financing, health research, health systems development, capacity building, health service delivery, health technologies, access to medicines, welfare services. And again, it's important to know that education, environment, agriculture, and other such sectors that have a bearing on health, that the many foundations are involved in these sectors. So how do these foundations achieve their objectives? And private foundations, as has been rightly said today, very eloquently said today, this evening, that they are grant providers. They provide grants and then they fund charities or non-profits that carry out the activities that will help them achieve their objectives. Public foundations, on the other hand, like ours, like the Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, we directly provide service using funds from the public or from grant-making organizations. And generally, all foundations tend to collaborate with government and private entities in broad areas of policy making, and also not forgetting advocacy. Advocacy happens to be so important, even though I believe that many foundations tend to neglect advocacy. It includes holding government accountable, holding their feet to the fire, so to speak, for many things that it should be providing for the populace, and providing platforms for voices to be heard, especially the marginalized groups, like disability groups, for instance. and then helping to ensure that we have a seat at the table. I talk to medical students and tell them that we need to start learning to engage, to negotiate, and to lobby, that we need to have a seat at the table. And if you do not have a seat at the table, your agenda will never be attended to. If you do not have a seat, pull a chair. And I think that foundations help entities, help causes to get a seat at the table. They identify gaps in the health sector and they work to fill these gaps. Let's look at examples, some examples of foundations that work in the health sector in Nigeria. I have again here T.Y. Danjuma Foundation. They work in the area of primary health care in addition to other areas. MTN Foundation happens to have worked very, very closely with Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, but right now they're really focused on in the area of maternal and child health, and of course also education. Remember that education has a strong bearing on health. So any foundation working in education is really actually supporting the health sector. Then not to forget the Ford Foundation. In fact, I'm very encouraged by the Ford Foundation because they look at advocacy. Advocacy is key because if you do not push government to play their roles, many times they forget that many things that they should be doing are not done. The Clinton Foundation are very important in the area of access to medicines, particularly in the area of HIV and AIDS. Antiretroviral drugs, these are things that the Clinton Foundation has ensured that Nigerians have access to and at reasonable costs. The Gates Foundation is important in the area of maternal and child health, and of course it's synonymous with polio. It's like when you think of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, you think polio, and as was eloquently put by the keynote speaker, that today we have Nigeria is polio-free. In many ways, this is from the work of the Gates Foundation. So challenges of foundations in Nigeria in the health sector. Let's look at it very, very quickly. Foundations are still not very well understood in Nigeria. And what we deal with erroneous sometimes in the erroneous perception of foundations in the public and also sometimes from the government. And in the area of what are they, who are they, what do they do, and how can we engage them? Foundations on their own part sometimes do not align their initiatives with what the government plans, with country plans, with local plans. They have their own ideas, and so they come in rather than key into local plans. They find it difficult to do so, and so that tends to there's some kind of barrier in that regard. Then there are a lot of access to grants from grant making. So in many cases, this presents a lot of challenge to many NGOs and charities. In fact, we come to them with some form of trepidation in no small way. There are extensive requirements and procedures for potential grantees. It's not easy. Many times you put out 100 requests or applications for grants, and you'll be lucky if you get one. But so the essence is just to continue doing. You fall or you fail, and you still try again. And then what about the capacities of charities, or lack of capacity, as a matter of fact, to successfully apply for and receive grants? I'm happy that some foundations are looking at that to improve the capacity of charities and entities, other entities that they support, to help them access grants successfully. Then what we also deal with sometimes in the health sector is that we have what we call one-off donations to charities, and this is very commonplace. So rather than holding the hand of the charities or non-profits, they give a one-off donation and walk away. That doesn't help. And today we have heard a lot about sustainability. Sustainable funding is key to development. You cannot do a one-off and walk away and expect that the program or project that you have put in place will be sustainable. So, and establishment of foundations or their entry into the development space, then this needs to be intentional. So far, this is not happening that way. It is not intentional. There's no strategic planning in the sense that in what areas will foundations be required? Do we know that? For how long will they be needed? Have we even identified these foundations? We have a clear database of foundations that work in Nigeria in the health sector. And then we need them to work with stakeholders and to have them key into the local plans. I said that earlier. And we need to also, as government or as a country, clarify the incentives that accrue to foundations like tax credits that they give. These need to be very clear. So in other words, intentionality is important. We're not seeing a lot of that. I'm going to go very quickly into Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria as a case study. This is our center, the National Sickle Cell Center. This is this is the first of its kind in all of Africa, and the Sickle Cell Foundation is housed here at the National Sickle Cell Center, opposite Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Yeah, so it's Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria is a public foundation. It's limited by guarantee. It's an NGO. It's non-profit, and it was registered as far back as 1994. But then unlike private foundations, Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria raises its own funds from the public, and like I said, also from grant-making foundations, individuals and corporate entities, private foundations like MTN Foundation, because we have worked very well with MTN Foundation. And then, like I said, also, we're not a grant-making body. Some people think that we are, and they come to us for funding, and unfortunately, we're not able to do so. We are an operating foundation. We carry out our own services. We undertake charitable activities, carry out our own projects and programs from the money we get from the public and from other entities. Sickle Cell Foundation is non-profit, and any revenue accruing from our activities is not shared among directors or employees. It's plowed back into the foundation's activities. So we'll go very quickly through pictures to look at what the foundation does, all the activities and achievements over the years. And if you look at, if I don't even finish my presentation today, just look at this band at the bottom that says, from prevention through treatment, care, support, and even cure, we do everything. The whole gamut of sickle cell programming is what Sickle Cell Foundation does, including research. The vision is lofty, to alleviate the burden of sickle cell disease in Nigeria and to ensure that persons who live with sickle cell live normal, long, pain-free, and productive lives. They are able to contribute to the community. And the mission is to develop and sustain a world-class national sickle cell center, which we have, and to drive the search for effective solutions to problems that are associated with sickle cell in Nigeria and beyond. So we do everything, starting from genetic counseling every day of the week, and this is integral to sickle cell management, and it's open to individuals, couples, and families. Anyone can walk in, or referrals are also received. We also have a very interesting model. We have dedicated sickle cell clinics that are embedded within government facilities. So that's a kind of public-private partnership. This is Massey Street Children's Hospital. We have these clinics, and we provide free routine medicines because patients with sickle cell need to be on medication every day of their lives, and we have over 5,000 such patients benefiting from free medication from Sickle Cell Foundation. And free vaccines and antibiotics for children, so important because it's infections that tend to kill these children. 150,000 children are born with sickle cell in Nigeria, and 100,000 of them do not live to the age of 5. And what kills them is infections. So with vaccines and antibiotics, these children are able to make that milestone of 5 years and live beyond that very well. Interestingly, people do not know that children with sickle cell can have stroke. So we have a stroke prevention program, and the one is a transcranial Doppler scan, a non-invasive procedure so that children between the ages of 2 and 16, where the risk is highest, are able to access this procedure. And so once they're identified as having a very high risk of stroke, preventative measures are quickly instituted in form of hydroxyurea, which is provided free, and also exchange blood transfusion. This is what I mean by exchange. This is where it happens, is an automated exchange blood transfusion, whereby you remove the sickle cells as much as possible from the patient's body and infuse AA cells, normal round-shaped cells, are infused in the patient. And this is a life-saving procedure, and it makes a world of difference in the lives of those with sickle cell. Sickle cell patients suffer a very stigmatizing complication.
And we have a connection glitch. Kindly bear with us, and hopefully we'll get connected again in a few moments. If the tech team could just confirm where the problem is emanating from. If that can hear us, we'll be back with you shortly. Or the other way around.
Hello? Victor, I was talking away.
Yes, we lost you about a minute ago. So if you could kindly.
Okay, where was I? So I start from exactly where I was. Okay, in any case, I'll just pick up from where I remember I left. I was talking about the FOS's, the automated.
You were talking about the incidence of the prevalence among children, the survival rate, and the fact that they're susceptible to strokes, and talked about the sonar system that's available. Okay, excellent. So we have this life-saving procedure referred to as exchange blood transfusion. It's automated, and within 30 minutes, the child who has sickle cell complications, sometimes acute chest syndrome, and at death's door is really revived in about 30 minutes because the blood is exchanged. That's putting it very simply. And here, like I talked about here, the chronic leg ulcers, they're very stigmatizing, sometimes leading to suicidal thoughts and suicidal tendencies, and sometimes successful suicides. So these are things that we treat in our center free of charge. We have a reference hemoglobin laboratory, first of its kind in Africa. We have a DNA laboratory whereby couples can determine the genotype of their unborn child in early pregnancy by DNA analysis. Again, this is the first of its kind in Africa. Here we have a pregnant mother on the couch in the minor theater. And what they're doing here is sampling, collecting a sample of her developing placenta to determine the genotype of her unborn child. We also carry out hip replacement surgeries in collaboration with the National Orthopedic Hospital in Igbobi, Lagos. Again, this is another complication of sickle cell. It's degeneration of the hip joint. We don't know, for some reason, the hip joint just breaks down. So the only way to treat it in a sustainable manner is hip replacement. And we'll do that again free of charge. We're in collaboration with the Igbobi Hospital. Now, very recently, the governor of Lagos State formally opened the bone marrow transplant center. Now, who said there's no cure for sickle cell? Well, that's false. There is a cure for sickle cell in the form of bone marrow transplantation. And we have an excellent state-of-the-art BMT center in which we have established in collaboration with Lagos University Teaching Hospital and the Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. It's again a public-private partnership. And we're very proud of this center. It's the first of its kind in sub-Saharan Africa for sickle cell. This is an example of a child who's benefited from sickle cell. Here he is, looking stunted, but here he is 1.5 years later, tall, lanky, taller than Professor Kionjo, our chairman, in just 1.5 years after bone marrow transplantation. So that's the wonderful thing the BMT Center does. So the center does other stuff, including training and capacity development for doctors, nurses, genetic counselors, lab scientists, and all other health workers in the area of sickle cell. Sickle cell is really something that treatment and management keeps evolving, and we have to keep pace with it. We've worked with WHO to develop this handbook for doctors and nurses so that just they can quick referral while consulting, they can make proper management decisions in treating their patients. We also are very much involved in research. We have also established a sickle cell registry, and we're mapping out right now where services for sickle cell can be found in Nigeria. You'd be interested to know that we're also looking into local remedies for sickle cell. And the clinical trials are being carried out when we're involved in newborn screening and other areas of research. We don't just do that. Well, in the area of welfare, we take care of our patients, free medicines, free surgeries, employment, skills acquisition, housing, school fees, name it. In the area of welfare, we are there to pick up the slack for them. And we have innovative programs like art and medicine program. Any chronic condition that people have, they want to find a way to cope with the disease. With sickle cell, pain happens to be the hallmark of this condition, and art is a way that helps alleviate their pain. And we also do music, as a matter of fact. Yes, many of our children are also now learning musical instruments, and a few of them are experts in the violin now, and this is something that they could do. We also go out into the community outreach programs. We're very big on that, but we have had funding challenges, including accessing grants from grant-making bodies. This remains a challenge, like I said earlier,
And for sickle cell, for some reason, many grant-making bodies tell us that sickle cell does not align with their own goals. So what we tend to do is piggyback on other areas where we feel that they're interested in working, so we're able to work with them. Advocates, like I said, is a big part of what we do, and unfortunately, many grant-making bodies do not do advocacy. And then in Nigeria, I believe, we've had a few seminars on this, that the concept of individuals supporting charities in a sustainable manner is still somewhat alien to our culture. So you don't really find people in conversation asking, what charity do you support? Or what's your charity of choice? It's not the kind, don't get me wrong, we are giving people, but not in that structured manner just yet. We'll get there. So how have we succeeded over the years in funding our programs? I've said here that the government's CSR policy has been very, very helpful. So we're able to engage with private companies, and they do look at us, looking our way, in our direction, because of CSR. But even if it's tokenistic, at least they're there, they're doing something. So we continuously engage with our funders. I wrote here that we wear them down, and yes, indeed, we do that until they answer. We just continue. And then one other way we do it is letting our funders into our space, so they see our work and our passion. There's no funder, no potential donor who has walked into our center and has gone back the same. They always come back and ask us more further questions and want to engage with us. So the trick is to get them into our own space and let them see what we do. And like I said earlier, we also piggyback on other activities that grant makers prefer to fund, like maternal and child health, like education, like youth empowerment. Those are psychedelic or interesting areas that they want to fund. So we piggyback on them and also get our own programs and projects funded. Now we also have innovative fundraising strategies, like what we call the Give Me 5 campaign. And the goal here is to register a large pool of donors, individual donors or even corporate donors, giving small amounts every month. We have a few now, but it hasn't given as much traction as we'd like, but we're sticking with it. The big part, though, is partnerships. Partnerships. We as Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria have reached out to other NGOs in the sickle cell space and have formed a coalition of sickle cell NGOs. So we're able to do stuff together that we may not be able to do in our own little niches or in our silos. And there's the Non-Communicable Disease Alliance. The sickle cell disease is considered a non-communicable disease. So working with other non-communicable disease entities like hypertension, heart disease, or diabetes, and so on, we're able to gain traction in many of our programs and projects. Then NGOs in the disability space, we work with them. We work also with United Nations, Department of Public Information. The WHO is also part of our collaborative partner. And I said earlier that PPP is a big strategy for us. We've developed a draft framework strategy on sickle cell disease as a means of achieving the Sustainable Development Goal number 3. And presented this to the Minister of Health, and this has formed the basis for the ministry to developing policies on sickle cell disease and guidelines. So in a way, it's like helping them to develop policies through the back door, and that helps us at the end of the day. We also have, like I said, dedicated sickle cell clinics in many states in Nigeria: Edo State, Delta State, Kano State, and of course here in Lagos State. And of course, our bone marrow transplant center is a clear example of public-private partnership. Again, partnership. That's what the slide is telling us. I have here a couple of interesting slides to round up. An African adage, a proverb that says, when spider webs unite, as thin as they are, they can tie up a lion. And that speaks to the importance of partnership and working together. Or sometimes to use the analogy of the broomstick and a bunch of broom. You can't break it when it's together. So that speaks to partnership, working together with other entities. And as far as foundations are concerned, working together as foundations. And I think it was, yes, one of our panelists actually mentioned this, but this is what I will leave us with. Like, if you go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, then go together. This speaks very much to this concept of partnerships, where all else feels that will always work. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Annette Akinshite, the CEO of the Sickle Cell Foundation of Nigeria. What an excellent presentation and intervention there. You are indeed correct. Nigeria has a disproportionate prevalence of sickle cell anemia and the world's largest number of those susceptible to the disease. If you'd kindly turn off your microphone, that would be much appreciated. We'd like to commend your advocacy work. Of what you said, if you don't have a seat, pull a chair. Certainly, the struggle continues. Absolutely had no idea that 150,000 children a year are born with sickle cell anemia, and of that, about 100,000 of them don't make it beyond the age of 5. So thank you to your foundation for the solar technology that you provide, the bone marrow transplant, the treatments, the advocacy that you do provide. The ultimate goal, I believe, for what you're doing is a sickle cell free world in our time. And so shall it be. Well, following very inspiring presentations by our distinguished panelists, Max Bokwana, CEO of Thabo Mbeki Foundation. Sorry, can you turn off your microphone, please? Can you turn off your microphone? Mr. Lasisi, can you turn off your microphone, please? Could everybody turn off the microphones, please? Following very inspiring presentations by our distinguished panelists, Max Bokwana, CEO of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, Ifeanyiwa Ugochukwu, CEO of the Tony Elumelu Foundation, Dr. Hope Osieta, CEO of the Leventis Foundation, and just concluding, Dr. Annette Akinshete, the CEO of the Sickle Cell Foundation, and an extensive tour de force of the role of foundations in developing countries by our keynote speaker, Professor Friday Okonofwa. We want to say thank you very much once again for your very robust contributions. We will now take a few questions from the audience. If you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand on screen, or ask a question or make a comment by hitting the chat button on the screen. We have a few that have come in, and our preference is that you actually direct your question to a particular panelist. So the first one here, Harry, is from Banji Macaulay. And your question to Mr. Mamadou Bitie is, we find that the uptake of innovative digital solutions across Africa are typically stagnated due to the lack of political will to reach the most vulnerable rural communities. We have multiple digital solutions designed especially for rural communities. Thanks, Banji Macaulay. So, Mr. Bitie, over to you. Is he still with us? Mr. Mamadou Bitie, the floor is yours for a response to the question. Okay, moving along. Professor Mina Ogbanga, your question says, it's exciting to see the presentation and would like to know how we in the South-South can collaborate with the foundation. Well, we've had quite a few speakers, so I am not sure which of the foundations you're actually referring to. If you could repose your question, we'd be glad to field that. The next question is from Professor Mosadumi. And you said, should private and community foundations in developing African countries with hugely ignored or cynical attention focus on limited objectives, that is 1, 2, or 3 at most, to make measurable impacts, however limited, in the society? A very good question. It's one about selectivity and comparative advantage. So I will hand over to any of the panelists at this point to provide an intervention if you'd like to, since it's not addressed to anyone in particular. So over to you, panel. question again is, should foundations just focus on a few key areas rather than trying to be the end all and be all for all that ails a community?
Victor,
Yes, please do, Annette. Please come in. Okay, if we're having problems connecting again with Annette, does any of the other panelists want to take up that question?
I think actually my experience is that foundations are utterly selective. They don't tend to pick up everything. And I think that because it's almost impossible for foundations to pick up everything, but deciding on what to pick on becomes a challenge. And sometimes foundations start with a particular focus, but after a reanalysis of the current situation, they shift the emphasis to another focus. And that has been my experience with several foundations. But the important thing is to do an analysis of current challenges facing a particular community and identifying where those foundations can make a value addition. I talked about value addition, which is very central to what foundations do. So in the analysis, if they do a strategic plan, remember when I was the fourth foundation, we would from time to time do some analysis of the current situation in the country, and from time to time shift the emphasis from one particular focus to the other. Especially because of limited availability of funds, and also because of the priority of the problems that need to be solved. So I think that's exactly that, even though I'm not currently in the foundation, but I believe that's what foundations do. Thank you.
Victor, just to add the point that has been made by Professor Dave, I think beyond the fact that the foundations are looking at certain focused areas, I think the experience of this discussion today indicates the importance of complementarity in the work that the foundations can do, and also the importance of cross-referencing amongst the foundations, and lastly, the importance of collaborations in the areas of common interest. So I think it's correct to say each foundation cannot be an answer to all of the problems that the society and the respective countries are facing. But I think we can complement each other, we can collaborate with one another, we can cross-reference amongst ourselves.
Thank you very much, Prof. earlier, and thank you very much, Max, very much appreciated. Mina Obanga asked the question, can we work to build a network of foundations and development actors? I believe the answer, based on Max's earlier presentation, the answer is yes, it's inevitable. We must, if we're going to develop as a continent. So thank you very much for that question. Dr. Muji Afolabi asked the question, thanks Ambassador Awolowo Dosunmu for inviting me. Much as I appreciate what the foundations are doing. Hello? Can we turn off the mics, please? Much as I appreciate what the foundations are doing, I need their assistance on security. Nigeria, for example, what's empowerment without security? I am not aware of any foundations that work in that regard. That definitely is a public good, but you raise an absolutely valid question with regards to development and the security architecture in any community or in any country. And I'm sure that at the level of advocacy, there's much that can be done in that regard. I'll hand over to the panelists, if any of the panelists want to quickly deal with that particular question, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, but I believe very strongly that, can I say something now? I believe that, I think that question is very important, even though foundations may not be able to work directly on security or insecurity, they could work on the determinants of insecurity. Because I do know that increasingly, we see insecurity in many parts of the developing world, Nigeria and other African countries, as due to inequality, response to inequality, poverty, and so on and so forth. So if they're able to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots, the rich and the non-rich, and also to solve the problem of employment, underemployment, poverty elevation, then we will be able to address insecurity. Because more and more, I see that people are not concerned, and that's why I spoke earlier on about government not being able to address certain areas, and then foundations come into those areas that government are not able to address. So, looking at the determinants, whether approximate or immediate determinants of insecurity, which to the best of my knowledge have been underplayed in this country. We know that insecurity, nobody talks about the causes of insecurity, determinant social causes. And we allow this to go back, we allow the other things to go back before we begin to talk about it. Nobody can fight insecurity indirectly. So with the work that foundations are doing, alleviating poverty, bridging unemployment, talking about youth, I remember our foundation had a big program on youth development, then I think that can lead in ways that can lead to reduction of insecurity. So we cannot say completely that foundations are not working on insecurity, but they are working on the determinants itself, which I believe are eventually much more sustainable than working on just the real elements of insecurity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much, Professor Okonefor. Greatly appreciated. I also want to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Gima Forje, who is representing General T.Y. Danjuma. Thank you very much for joining us. And I also want to acknowledge your comment. You said, from our experience at the T.Y. Danjuma Foundation, it is better for foundations to stay focused rather than spread wide and thin. Change can be introduced at some point, but it's important to stay focused for a strategic period and evaluate at the end. Very, very wise words. And you also add congratulations to you and the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation on your 30th anniversary. It's been an exciting conversation. Thank you very much. Very, very, very much appreciated. I'm now going to hand over to, or rather allow Annette to come in, and I believe that you have an intervention that you also want to provide. Thank you. Annette, are you there?
Victor, was that me?
Yeah, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Annette.
Okay, no, I was actually going to speak to the issue of foundations going into so many projects at the same time. I've actually had that discussion with MTN Foundation, that I felt they should not spread themselves thin, but rather be more focused. And I think it's the same for all the foundations. So take an area that has been identified as that there's need, and focus on that and work with them along, rather than not hold our hands. Give us donations, give us grants, work with us a couple of years, and then let us go. I think you should hold their hands all the way until we're able to. I think it's Yoruba adage that says, something like that. I speak Yoruba with an Igbo accent. So take us to a point where we shall be able to stand on our own, so to speak. So it speaks to sustainability.
Thank you very much, Annette. And audience and panelists, you're going to allow me, forgive me here, but I'm going to have to play the Angels advocate this evening. And this question I'm going to direct to Max and to Professor Okonefor, because in part of your presentations, you also come at the discussion about foundations in developing countries from two different perspectives. Professor Konofwe, you were actually quite complimentary of several international foundations, and Max, you talked about the need for self-reliance and African solutions without having the agendas of others imposed on Africa. So the reason why I would like both of you to respond is because we have a question here from Babatunde Fakunle, and he says, Victor, excellent facilitation. Well, thank you very much. How much reliance should Africa and Africans place on foreign foundations? This question is against the backdrop of the Africans saying the best place to find a helping hand is at the end of your own arm. So I will let Prof go first, and then we'll come to Max second. Your thoughts, please.
And
thank you, Victor. I believe that question is very...
Yes, we are off from the Zoom area because what they are now having to deal with is basically question time, and we will leave that. Now, let me thank all of you who have taken the patience to be with us at this particular time. A lot's happening, and I hope literally to come back later on, if not tomorrow, for our usual hashtag, the Bleeding Edge series. And on this note, I'd like to say very thank you to all of you who tuned in to watch the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation lectures. I've had a good time, and I equally believe that many of you that equally joined us in the Zoom area and then on the live stream, you've enjoyed and you've learned a lot of things. The usual Bleeding Edge will resume very, very shortly. Thank you, and I hope to see you very, very soon in our usual Bleeding Edge series. Have a great evening. God bless you. Good night.